Yeah, y'all said in my
And
mind.
I agree. It wasn't stated, but I think it was implied.
Well,
So,
that's exactly.
okay. Yeah, but I agree with you. I appreciate you making a point. Ms. Hodge?
Okay, next on the agenda is Clerk of Municipal Court, and I don't see her here, so we'll move on in the agenda. Next is Public Works with Director Pat Biegler.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't turn that one on. Got it.
Okay, good afternoon. It's
Good
good to
afternoon.
see you all. This afternoon, the only subject we're really broaching from Public Works is we have proposed a fee increase for cemeteries, and I thought that you would like to see what we're proposing. I have Daryl Meadows, who is our new cemetery manager, who is going to go through the presentation, and we're all here for questions if you have them.
Thank you, Lionel.
Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, Deputy City Manager, and Council. I'm Daryl Meadows. I'm with the Public Works Department. I'm the Cemetery Manager. Today we're here to present to you a proposal for fee increases in the grave opening and closing fees. Also, the establishment of an application and registration fee. So we're going to talk about a little bit about revenues and application fees. Okay, revenues for fiscal period 2015, the projected revenues were $20,000. And we had a number of 45 opening and closings, which gave us a total of $24,280 in revenue. For fiscal period 2016, we had a projected revenue of $20,000 and a number of opening and closings for a 9-month period were 26, which gave us a total revenue of $22,067.50. I did a rate comparison with a municipality with Savannah and a couple of private cemeteries in the area, and found that we were significantly lower in rates than they were, and we provide the same service that they do. With Savannah, well, with Columbus, our open and closing rates for grave spaces, if there's a vault, is $150, and without a vault, it's $170. And with Savannah, their rate is $450, and that's a standard rate, and that's whether there's a vault or not a vault. One of the private cemeteries that I did the comparison with, their rate was $950, which was a standard rate for them. So was Evergreen, which is another private cemetery that I checked into. Their rate was $950. For children, Columbus's rate, and this is a Monday through Friday rate. For children, our rates for opening and closings with the vault was $200, and without a vault, it was $220. Savannah's rate for children was $500, and that was a standard rate. And there was also a standard rate of $950 with the two private cemeteries that I did the comparisons with. And as for our adult rates, opening and closings, the rate was $450 with the vault and $700 without a vault. Savannah's rate was $750, which was their standard rate for adult burials, and $950 was the standard rate for the two private cemeteries that I did the comparisons with. As for our ashes from cremains, we have a rate of $150 Savannah's rate is $450. That's their standard rate. And the two private cemeteries that I did the comparisons with was $950. We also have a weekend and holiday rate comparison, and these rates are for infants with a vault is $230, and without a vault is $250. And with Savannah, they have a rate of $625, which is their standard rate for weekends and holidays. The two cemeteries, private cemeteries that I did the comparisons with, one of them had a rate of $1,100, which is their standard rate, and one had a rate of $950. For the children, on the weekend and holiday rates, Columbus's rate is $300 with the vault and $320 without a vault. And Savannah's rate was $700 standard rate. And again, the private cemetery had a rate of $1,100 and $950. For our adult burials on weekends and holidays, we had a rate of $550 with a vault and $800 without a vault. Savannah's rate, again, was $1,025 for their weekend and holiday rate, and Green Acres had a rate of $1,100, and Evergreen had a rate of $950. And for our ashes and cremains, our weekend and holiday rate was $230, and Savannah's rate is $650. And again, the standard rate of $1,100 with one of the private cemeteries and $950 with the other cemetery. We are also proposing an establishment of an application and registration fee. And we currently do not have an application and registration fee, but we are proposing a rate of $25. And as you can see here, the requirements for the application and registration process is quite lengthy, and we go through this process with every burial that we do at the cemeteries. One of the other cemeteries that I did a comparison with, which is another municipality, is Savannah. They do have an application and registration fee in process. We'll go to the next slide. Here you will see a chart with the proposed fee increases. Yes, ma'am.
Hang on, sorry.
Are those items on the application requirement currently required?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
It's just that we don't have a fee for that, but we currently require
Yes,
that
ma'am.
list of things. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, we do. With every burial that we do, we have to go through that process. Also, there are some ledgers in the office. In addition to that process there, every burial has to be recorded in the ledgers so we can keep track of who's buried in which of the 4 cemeteries that we have.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Here are the proposed rates that we are presenting to you today. The proposed rate for the infants would be a standard rate of $350, and that's a Monday through Friday rate. That's a weekday rate. And the proposed weekend and holiday rate would be $450, which would be a standard rate. And what I mean when I say a standard rate, and that's whether there's a vault or there isn't a vault. For children, the proposed rate Monday through Friday, with or without a vault, and will be a standard rate of $550, and the weekend and holiday rate for children as well would be $650. And for our adult burials, the proposed standard rate of $900, and also for our weekend and holiday rate, we're proposing a rate of $1,150. And for the ashes and cremains, proposed rate Monday through Friday of $300, and for our weekend and holiday rate, $500. And of course, the application fee would remain the same whether it's on the weekend or holiday. If these changes are approved, with the projected revenue of $20,000, we should see an amount of revenue totaling $36,000. With the addition of the application fee and 40 grave opening and closings at a rate of $900, and the implementation of the application and recording fee of $25, we should see a projected increase in revenue of $17,000, giving us a total of $37,000. Yes, ma'am.
That's 17,000 is the increase over FY16 for
Yes, ma'am.
FY17, and that was included in the recommended budget.
Any questions of Daryl? And you have one of those jobs we don't hear a lot about,
Yes,
which
sir.
is a good thing. Means you
Yes,
do it
sir.
well. So thank you for your
Yes,
service.
sir.
Appreciate what
That
you're
concludes
doing.
my presentation, and I open the floor for any questions that you may have. I'll do the best I can to answer them.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to know, did we not check the rates at Park Hill?
Yes, ma'am, we did check the rates there, and they were significantly higher.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
At this time, we have, in the area, we have the best rates there are. As a matter of fact, on a daily basis, I have people coming into my office advising me that when their time of need comes, they would like to be buried in our cemeteries.
I know you said 4 cemeteries. What are the 4? I know you have Riverdale, Porterdale, and Linwood.
Ma'am,
What are the 4 cemeteries?
Riverdale, Porterdale, East Porterdale, and Linwood
okay.
cemeteries.
Okay.
Now, that's a young man looking for revenue. He's doing pre-planning. That's right. Let me ask you,
Yes, sir.
were you finished? I do want to ask you a question. How do these, and I may be way off in another field, how do these impact our paupers burials that we conduct?
Let me answer that. It
Okay.
does not. This is for those who already own plots or purchase plots.
Right.
And this is charged for those when they utilize them. So those people who own them. The pauper burial area is set aside. And of course, there's no fee for
Okay.
that. We do not charge a fee for that.
Okay, I just didn't know if we would, incur some kind of loss as a result of that. All right, Councilor Barnes.
It's got a question, but military rate, do I get any cheaper? Do I get a break on this?
No, sir, I'm sorry. No, sir, I'm sorry.
Just salute him when he goes by.
Yes, sir. We'll make sure the area that he's placed in is clean and presentable.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure we'll give him a salute. I'm not sure.
Give you a flag, huh?
All right, any other questions for Daryl? Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
your
This concludes my
presentation.
presentation.
Yes, sir, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Daryl Meadows. He's new to the cemetery division.
Yes, sir.
He was one of the special enforcement officers, and you can tell from his voice and his presentation, he has a bright future in this government.
Thank you,
So
sir.
we got to continue to grow our leaders internally.
With his voice, he could preside over some hearings. Before, Ms. Bigler, before you, I know you don't have anything else, and I'm sorry if I'm catching you cold, but did, I've received a lot of calls, and I don't know if anybody else around the table has, with regards to some of the proposed fee increases on from animal control. What would it cost? Do you know offhand, without Drell being here, what would it cost if somebody's dog escapes and it's picked up, put in the pound, and they have to go try to bust them out? What does that run?
We're not increasing fees this year.
Okay.
None.
We're not.
No, we're not. It would depend on how long, and I really can't answer specifically on that, but I can get back with you all on that.
Okay, well,
Whether they
Right.
got tags.
Right.
If they're not tagged, if they're not.
and they're not registered, and they're not, right. I
Right,
got you.
well, and there are fees which would be for holding the animal, for
Right.
keeping the animal, but there are also then, if they don't have a tag and they don't have vaccinations and what have you, then there are fines that are levied by the court, and we don't control those.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And just to reiterate, there are no proposed fee increases for animal control. I don't know where the rumor started, but we have been fielding emails and calls and media responses really for weeks, but there's no proposed increases in animal control.
Mr. Meadows, thank you. Ms. Hodge?
Thank you.
Okay, and next on the agenda is the Sheriff's Department, and I believe Sheriff Dar.
Okay. While he's on his way up, Counselor Davis.
Yes, I'm going to put on the delete list, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think y'all want me to go in detail, but the reasoning and the logic behind it. I think last year, I think we all experienced all the honors and awards and recognitions that various departments received. But I'd like to put on the delete list across the board, okay, finance, across the board, education training, promotions and advertising outside the tax assessor's office, memberships, dues, publications, travel, schools, cell phones, and I'd like to have a category, and this is not going to go on the delete list, but my request is to put all these on the delete list where they were in the same place last year. There's been a significant amount of increases, so I would like to have that on the delete list with the amount of money we're talking about. Can you do that?
Can you read through that again? I got education and training, promotions and advertising, travel, publications.
These are all line items that are used in the budget.
Right, can you just read through them one more time?
Education, training, promotions, advertising outside the tax assessor's office. We
And
know
probably-
what she uses those
And
for.
probably planning.
Memberships, membership dues, publications, travel, schools, cell phones, and I would like to see a separate category for overtime. And Mr. Budget Chair, honestly, this would have been a question for the Public Works Director on the overtime on the recycling. I was curious to why that was significant, but I'd like to see a separate note on that.
And I just want to be clear, you're wanting to make sure that the FY17 budget for these items is not higher than FY16,
Well, if it's higher, then it would be a deletion, but no lower than 16.
then no lower than 16.
And if
Okay.
it's lower than 16, then you would add it back to 16. You follow me?
Right, but
Because some of them are lower this year than last year. So just add it back to whatever it was last year.
right, and some departments reallocated their funds within their operating budget, so they might have taken money from travel because they needed to, do another operation. So we'll go through that and determine if it was reduced or if it is higher, where they took the funds from, and we'll bring that back to council for your information. And if you want to remove that, then
And that's okay. I mean, if there's extra funds to reallocate, that's one thing, but I'm looking at a mirror of last year's budget
Right.
with these line item categories.
in total, there wasn't an increase, but if there was a department who had a need in another line, they might have gone in and reduced their travel in order to accomplish another item in their budget. So we'll provide that information to you.
If they reduced it, you give it back to them on what they spent in 2016.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Welcome, Sheriff.
How you doing, sir? I appreciate an opportunity to address council and the mayor and city manager and the finance department. What I kind of wanted to take just wouldn't want to take up too much of your time, and what you get a copy out that Lieutenant Anthony gave you is our entire proposal that we gave, that we turned into the city manager was this thick. I didn't know if everybody wanted this bit much of a documentation, but what you basically have in our budget proposal for 2017 is, when you look into it, it breaks it down by each line item and everything, from the general budget at the very beginning, and of course in the back, the lost budget. And just kind of wanted to make a couple of points. I didn't want to go by every line item unless you guys wanted to do that. We'll be glad to do that if you wanted to, but just kind of wanted to make a couple of notes, the differences in between the mayor's proposed FY17 budget and the FY17 budget that we were proposing. And the first area I wanted to bring your attention to was, it's going to be in the general budget. It comes really under the medical part of it, and it's consulting fees, and it's 2315. If you look at that line item is supposed to consist of the consulting fees, which is our medical contract for our medical provider and our mental health provider. Our medical, of course, is CCS, and our mental provider is New Horizons. The CCS contract for the medical aspect of it has a slight bit increase. I think it was about $70,000 increase that was built into the contract. And our New Horizons, if I'm looking at it right, was staying the same this year as it was last year. But that total comes out to about $3.3 million. But that was what should be in that line item. And if you look in the mayor's proposed budget, all it is has the CCS amount for the contracting. What we've done in the mayor's proposed budget is taking the New Horizons, the mental health amount, and put it down into medical services for inmates. So I think I kind of brought this to attention to everybody's last year. One of those line items is going to be short, depending on how much however you want to look at it. I did have a note on this year. The medical service for inmates is not as much as it's been in the past, so actually we're trending pretty good. What I had is at the end of April, the medical service for inmates, we had spent $64,121. So it's not that much money, but there is a little bit of money that would need to be put in it. So I bring this to the attention that the line item that for medical service for inmates, that needs to be put in with consulting, which is, like I said, the mental health. That would provide for our medical or our mental health, and there needs to be some money, whatever you feel is necessary or whatever amount you feel adequate, for medical service for inmates. The next one I would like to bring everybody's attention to, and we've probably talked about this in the past, is in the mayor's proposed budget for FY17 for the sheriff's office. And when we talk about bailiff line item, it's basically the bailiff line item and the reserve deputy line item. Proposing $311,000, If you look at our proposal, we still say that that's not an adequate amount to provide the security that Major Massey deems necessary to provide security for the buildings that we're responsible for in the city government. And that's so that there is a difference in that amount. The last item that I wanted just to bring everybody's attention to is the line item in the mayor's proposed budget was $6115, if I looked at it right, and that involves the pay for the men and women at the county jail and the few that we have at the government center for the overtime that they're scheduled to work every 28 days to cover for that cost and a little bit more. But those are just basically the four items I wanted to bring everybody's attention to. And one more, the pharmaceutical cost. And let me see, and I apologize. Let me look at what that line item is. Yes, ma'am. In the mayor's proposed budget, it's if if I look at it right, it was 791,000. I got the most up-to-date cost for our pharmaceuticals. It's at $903,000 as of today's date. I think there's $100,000 out there, so we're going to be tracking over $1 million on pharmaceuticals. So 791 is not going to be adequate enough. So those are I guess, the 5 areas I kind of wanted to point out, unless anybody else has any questions for me.
Counselor Thomas.
Sergeant, would you, I'm
Yes,
sorry,
ma'am.
Sheriff, would you give us those object codes one more time? Just the of the 5 that you want us to look at?
Well, I need you to look at every one that we have a difference. I just figure if we want to sit here and...
But
Well, I
the
know,
ones
that's what
that you
I'm
brought
saying.
to our attention.
Well, I really wasn't trying to be facetious. I'm just saying I know we don't want
Sure.
to perhaps be here all day. But the ones we are talking about right now is the consulting one, which is 2315, Ms. Thomas? 6315, I apologize. I'm trying to make sure that is
Yeah,
right. The
right,
consulting
6315.
one, the medical service for inmates, and I did not have that down. You give me-
6320?
Thank you on that one. The bailiff and reserve deputy pay, let me see. That's it, 6145. And then for the overtime for the sworn is 6130. And then for pharmaceuticals,
Right.
6323.
Thank you, thank you.
And also needed to make a note, because we did turn it in about the lost, if you had any questions on that, I had some notes on that. When you look at those amounts, those, that's a combination of a number of different things. Some of those are automobiles to be replaced based on the criteria of mileages and years. We did ask for some new vehicles for transport of the patients. It seemed like we're having an increase of juvenile transports and mental health transports, and some of those vans would give us that capability to handle that a little bit better, especially with the juveniles, because it seems like we're traveling all over the state of Georgia transporting juveniles. And then, of course, some of it's capital less than $5,000, and that involves tasers, service weapons, body cameras, radios, and then the capital expenditures over $5,000. That was also, we put in for a new x-ray scanner in case one of these goes down, and some other things. So,
All right, Counselor Woodson.
This is more for Angelica. Sorry, Angelica. This is more for Angelica. Angelica, like on the pharmacy and medical service, does Medicaid help with some of these inmates? Or do they lose all their rights? Like, let's say if someone got arrested and they were like on Medicaid or something like that, or insurance company, let's say, or their family had them on their insurance or something like that, they can't cover some of this cost? Do we know?
I'm not sure. I'm going to let Pam take this question.
Okay, or you can answer me later. I'm just thinking if there was like an offset to our cost.
There is sometimes, but most of the time, once they become an inmate, their insurance stops. So there are times when they do recoup some funds, but it's very little. Most of the time, if you read your policy, if you become an inmate, your policy is not in effect anymore.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay.
I believe so. I would have
Can
to
we double check that
Yes.
for Medicaid?
We-
I'm gonna have to go look at my insurance policy. I hope not, but if it happens.
I would say, Ms. Woodson, we'll check on that. I think the only thing that we've put in place when Ms. Hodge was still the finance director, I think, and I forget the time frame, when an individual's been in the county jail, and I think it's like 60 days or something like that. If there's a certain time frame, and I would have to look at it again. If they're receiving Social Security benefits, then that stops, then that money's then turned over to the city. And you were recouping some of that from those who are getting Social Security benefits for their upkeep at the county jail.
City manager, can we, just out of curiosity, not now, but can we bring that up over in a work session, how it works, to see how we could recuperate some of this money, or see what comes to us? I'm trying to help you out, but I'm trying to get other answers to see,
Well,
in which way.
Yeah,
No, but she said she would have to go, and he did too, that they would have to go back and see about Social Security and the others.
Yeah, we'll consider that a referral, and then if we have it by next week when we do the finance update, we'll just brief you at that time.
Okay, I'm just curious to see if there's
Sure.
any way, or maybe there's something we weren't aware of, any
Yes.
laws that's changed, because there's a lot of medical laws changing, insurance laws changing with the increases. Maybe there's something that us being so busy or just a normal routine didn't see it, that we could probably see how to help us offset that cost of pharmacy.
I mean, that's an excellent question. It's something we need to know, and if there's an opportunity there that we can recoup some funding, we need to do it. So we'll certainly research that and give you some feedback.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm not rushing you, I'm just interested and see if we can find some funding.
Okay. Any other questions for the sheriff? Counselor Davis?
Just, this is a general question. Where's the line item for the budget from last year? Sheriff's budget from last year? I'm looking, I see the loss, but I don't. Is the general fund in here?
Yeah. C-100.
Got it?
I'll keep looking, but you said it's on the thumb drive, right?
Yes, sir. Should be on there.
I see the jail. Is the main budget on here?
Ms. Hodge, Mayor Pro Tem is asking, on some of these items that the sheriff mentioned specifically, do you have the recommended budget? Because it's tough to see what the difference is as we...
I do know, when I was just looking at the pharmaceuticals, the recommended is, it looks like it's $7,900, $798,910 for pharmaceuticals.
Mayor Pro Tem, was that your question?
Yeah, but I want all 5 of them.
Yeah, we've got, on all those object codes that he mentioned, I don't know if you wrote them down.
Overtime pay for sworn,
The 6130.
For overtime for sworn, the total in the recommended was $50,000, and I believe the request that was $442,055.
Recommended was 50,000?
Yes.
what was the actual for 20? That makes sense.
This is a gap pay. They've taken the gap pay
The actual year-to-date is $409,230.89.
That differential, is that the gap pay?
That's correct.
And what about the bailiffs?
$61.45.
Bailiffs,
reserve.
$61.45, $311,300, and the request is $981,750. Actual spent to date, $608,931.28.
That's a pretty, is there,
Well, let me just say, too, now, I think our budgets were actually due in February. I received a budget from the sheriff late April, like April 19th. And so what came forward to you was what we used what we had to use, because budgets were due in February, and so we submitted from last year. And then, of course, on April 19th, I received the budget, and I forwarded it to Finance. And of course, the mayor's budget was already prepared by that time, and so that has a lot to do with what you see.
That's a lot, that's a big
I
deal.
do, and I would like to make a comment when I get an opportunity.
What about consulting?
6315.
6315, the budget for CCS, which is what's included in 6315, we have in the recommended $2,668,301, and the request is $2,735,008. The number that we've included, the $2,668,301, is what is in the contract for CCS. That's a contract that actually, the contract's new amount becomes effective September the 1st. So July and August would actually be at the previous year rate, which is $215,881.92 per month. So the total needed for CCS for FY17 would actually be $2,655,348, based on the contract. And then the $650,439 for New Horizons is actually in line item 6320, the 650,439. And what has happened is we have had discussions with the sheriff's office about the particular line item to be used for each of the contracts and services, and those were budgeted again in FY17, not in the line item that we've agreed. So those are just shifting those particular things around between the line items. For pharmaceuticals,
How much, can you give me those numbers on 6320 again?
6315,
No, 6320.
6320, but I think what he's using. 6320 is medical services for inmates. The sheriff's request is $135,000, but we've also included in the medical supplies, also medical services. Like I said, have them in the wrong line items, and those need to be adjusted. It was $125,000, and that includes both medical supplies and the medical services. So we need to make that adjustment. And on the pharmaceuticals, 6323, the recommended is $798,910, and the request is $997,000 and spent to date on pharmaceuticals. Spent to date on pharmaceuticals is $903,220.65.
So why are we going to budget 790?
Mayor Pro Tem asked why did we budget 790?
And again, we looked at what was budgeted in the prior year and carried forward the operating budget. The sheriff's budget wasn't submitted to us until April 19th.
I got that, but what was wasn't the actual much higher?
Not at the time when we were preparing the budget.
That's $200,000 difference.
But if you look at previous year's budget for pharmaceuticals, and I don't have that right with me, and I think Lieutenant Anthony could find it, I think last year we spent like $940 on pharmaceuticals, so that's last year's numbers.
Councilor Davis?
I'd have to look, Councilor Davis, I'm sorry I didn't have it with me in front of me.
FY15 actual was $899, $821.20. That was-
Yeah, that was,
In this budget.
it's the budget, but that wasn't actual.
I think it was more than that, though, Councilor Davis. I apologize. I'd get those to you, Mr. Davis.
Councilor Davis, you're up in the queue, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say on here, I'm just going through here, it's not listed as a sheriff, it's, this thumb drive is listed as administration, 550, for anybody trying to find it, but that's what it's separated out under.
Okay. Sheriff, you said you had something that you wanted to add?
The only thing I wanted to say, comment about when they're making comments about when the budget was turned in, I think when the mayor was having the individual meetings with individuals, departments and such, I think our budget was turned in probably about 2 weeks after that. So I don't want anybody here in this room or people who are watching think like that, that we were just turning the budget whenever. It was those budgets for us wouldn't have been set to, even if we had met with the mayor, till after that anyway.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, let me just say this, that those are my meetings, the budget review meetings, and budgets were due like February, budget requests were due like February 19th, and what I do is schedule meetings with various department heads and elected officials, and they come and they sit with me. The mayor is present, my staff, deputy city managers, and everybody's present, and we go through and we iron out things such as what we're discussing today. And then the budget obviously is prepared, and the mayor submits her budget. And so it just simply did not follow the usual process and timeline, and as a result, from February to March to April, 2 months, 60 days later, I did receive the budget request from the sheriff's office. That's the timeline, and that's what happened.
Well, however we got here is where we are, and there's about $120,000 difference between the actual and the pharmaceuticals and the budgeted.
And that won't even be, and you got to remember, that is today's date. It'll be about $1 million or more when it's all said and done.
Yes, Councilor Allen.
Sheriff, did I understand you to say that you have roughly $100,000 outstanding on the pharmaceuticals?
It says unobligated was 104,310.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, but that's what we have so far. Spent 903, and then unobligated was 104.
Okay, thank you.
And that was from today's date.
Any further comments or questions? Well, where's it going to come from? Well, is that a request?
I'm requesting to add $209,000 for pharmacy. Where it's coming from, I don't have a clue.
How much?
$209,000.
Okay, any further comments or questions?
There's no way we can get any kind of reduction in costs on pharmacies? Have we tried?
Yes, ma'am, Miss Evelyn. What you have is you just have a few providers of any magnitude that provides pharmaceuticals on this level, as far as how many inmates we have, to jails or prison systems. And Diamond Pharmaceuticals is the best one we've found so far as cost. And one of the big factors that of a company we choose when it comes to pharmaceuticals, believe it or not, is we have to have the ability for them to basically buy back some of the unused medication we don't use, because then those costs would be astronomical if we didn't. So that is one of the criteria with the company we do use.
There's no organization where we battle like out a pool with the other sheriff's offices in the state?
No, not that, no, ma'am, not that I know of. Everybody kind of does their own thing and just deals with some of the larger pharmaceutical providers.
Councilor Thomas?
Ms. Hodge, the bailiffs, 6145, is that only in the uniform division?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And so there's a $660,000 difference in those, in what the sheriff has in his and what you have in the mayor's budget? He has 981,000, and in the mayor's budget is 311,000.
670,450. 670,450.
I'm not sure what we need to do at this point. I mean,
His actual year-to-date is $608,000.
well, even that is $300,000 more than is in the budget. So, you know, I'm somewhat stymied as to what needs to be done at this point. It clearly is, we have to have bailiffs. We can't operate the sheriff's department without bailiffs, and there's no way that you're going to be able to operate it on $311,000. Do we have to have 981? I don't know. But somewhere in between those two, we've got to come to a figure. And I don't know what...
Well, what about, is there any money left?
Is that not true? I mean, don't
No.
we have to do some kind of
I would-
reconciliation with those two numbers?
I would assume.
It's the same with the marshal's office, and there was in the courtroom. I guess we would have to ask the sheriff. The actual year-to-date is $608,000. So why would you budget $981,000?
Ms. Evelyn, on that one, that's where Major Massey, when we come to you on that kind of request, it is after I've talked to Major Massey, and then I've asked him, okay, Major, what is it going to take to provide security for the Citizen Service Center, the other government buildings, the Columbus, the government center downtown, and any other building necessary, not only from the security, but the bailiffs in the courtrooms and such. And that's the number he comes up with, based on what the trends we're seeing as far as how many courts we're running with the Superior Court judges, state court judges, and such as that. But that's the number that he comes up with. He is what you would call our expert when it comes to that, so.
But does he not take into consideration what was actually being spent at the present time?
Ms. Evelyn, I would have to ask him that. I'm not sure. I mean, I think when he looks at it, he looks at, and I'm sure if he was standing before you, he's looking at complete max bailiff coverage and reserve deputies and such like that.
I guess part of my concern is that at least we're looking at $300,000. And at this point in time, we've not come up with $300,000. At the most, we're looking at $600,000, give or take
I haven't yet.
$20,000.
Do we still have any money in reserve that we had set aside for the study on the possibility of a new jail? Because I know we had used some of that to cover budget overruns. Is that
That was-
completely depleted?
Yes, that's been depleted.
What are the opportunities under the OLOST for public safety?
At this time, the OLOS fund is balanced, and it's part of the 60-day reserve, so any additions out of OLOS would have to be reductions in other departments that's been budgeted, or it will drop us below the 60 days.
Okay. Counselor Thomas, you finished? Counselor Davis?
Just, is there a way, can we get an actual 2016 budget? Does Finance Department have that? Who has that with the Sheriff's Office?
An actual of the budget, the FY16?
Last year, all their expenditures, what their budget.
Right. Do you want
An
the
actual.
actual expenditures?
Yeah.
Or the budget?
Yeah, last year.
The A103, which is a budget to actual report, is on the
Last
thumb
year
drive.
would be up to, well, it'd be up
And it's,
going into this year.
The one that's on the thumb drive is through March of this year. So we did provide you a budget to actual report for the Sheriff's Office for FY16 through March. We can give you a current report, and we'll be happy to provide a current report for the Sheriff's Office.
Well, so this adopted budget is the actual?
That's the budget,
From
the
last
actual
year?
budget. I
These are
ran.
the actual line items.
Yes, the actual expenditures year-to-date for the Sheriff's Office in the general fund is $22,101,262.73, which is 89.18% of the budget. And that's through yesterday's date in total.
Can we get a copy of that?
I can give you, yes,
just-
sir, we'll make you a copy of the, yeah, we can send it to you in an email.
I'm just trying to compare all these numbers here. The other thing, and the request as well, the other thing is, Ms. City Manager, can the Sheriff's Office tap into the consultants? I know we saved a lot on pharmaceuticals for the city. I mean, is there a way that there could be some kind of a relationship there to look at cost savings?
That's an excellent thought, and
We're dealing with a
I think-
consultant, they have access to
I think we
many
need to
resources.
talk to Shaw Hankins, and we need to talk to KRATC, and because that, I thought of that earlier as we were discussing this, but if we could take advantage of that opportunity, as we do with our own pharmaceuticals, I think it would certainly be beneficial to us. So I think that's something we need to take a look at. But we need to talk to Shaw Hankins and KRATC first.
I'm sure the sheriff would be in agreement with it, right?
Yes, sir.
So let us do that.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, at this point, I would ask the city manager, I mean, this has kind of been dropped on us at the 11th hour on the last day, and nobody indicated that there were some discrepancies or that there was a budget that had not been turned in that did not match or was significantly different. So I guess, what is the recommendation of staff? You guys have had the luxury of being able to look at all the numbers, and if your recommendation is what you've budgeted,
Yes.
and that you think that there's some managerial tools that can be utilized,
Right.
we're going to have to get guidance from you.
Sure.
Because all we're seeing is the two numbers, actually the three, the actual, the proposed, and the requested, and they're all over the board.
Well, this is no different than what we've been dealing with for 5 or 6 years. It's obviously a difficult and contentious point, and that is, because you spend it, is that what we're required to budget? The answer to that's no. And so this is an over in a $28 million budget. Is the head of the office or department, whether it's a general government or elected office, required to manage the budget within a healthy nearly $30 million, well, it is $30 million when you take into consideration the supplement from the medical center contract and other ways we supplement through Public Works and through IT and other such ways. So, yes, the sheriff could have $3 million worth of bailiffs. He's got a $28.8 what is it, Pam, $28.4 million budget. So he could utilize and move that around as he sees fit. He could utilize and move it around for pharmaceuticals. It's a matter of what we've been talking about when the marshal was just up here, and he was saying that he moved things from, postage and this and that and the other, and he moved it around to the things that he put priorities on. So elected official can spend the money in any way he sees fit once we allot it. But I think the question is, as we've had with these overruns in so many years, is because he has spent it, are we required to budget it? The answer to that is no. Are we required to budget that in the next year simply because he spent it in the prior year? The answer to that is no. So we recommended this budget, a $28.4 million budget, is ample. We believe for the mission of the sheriff, and the sheriff disagrees and has submitted an alternative. And unfortunately, there wasn't, it was 2 months late, and so there wasn't an opportunity for us to make any headway with those two conflicting positions, and it was, in fact, by virtue of that tardy submission, then dumped on council. So we fully believe that the office budget is submitted is ample. Yes, sir. And that it can be, at his discretion, moved around as he sees fit. And as I said, he could have $300,000 worth of bailiffs, $3 million worth of bailiffs. He has, how many deputies, Pam? And so all those personnel are at his disposal to meet his mission of jail, courts, and security. Hundreds of people.
Okay. Any further comments or questions on behalf of the Budget Review Committee? Any recommendations or anything that you want added? All right. Well, Sheriff, thank you
Appreciate it.
very much. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, but this is just not acceptable. I don't know how we can go away from here with these kinds of discrepancies between what has been recommended and what has been recommended by the sheriff and what has been recommended by the mayor, and just say, deal with it. I just don't know how we can do that. And I realize that it is now 2:45 on the last day that we were to deal with this. But I'm very frustrated about where we are, and this stuff has just been dumped, and I use the word dumped. Yes, it was given to us on the thumb drive. There was no explanation of the thumb drive. There was nothing that said it's here, look here, pull these kinds of things together, and I can do that, but that's, to my way of thinking, somebody else's responsibility. And so, and I don't know whose responsibility it is, but for me to have to sit down and pull 5 or 6 different folders off that thumb drive in order to, and multiple pages. The budget that the sheriff gave us was 114 pages. The budget, the total budget for the city that the mayor gave us was 106 pages. It's just not acceptable. And I guess you can sort of look at me and tell I'm very frustrated, but you know, I don't know. And so there.
So there. Mayor Pro Tem.
What was the, Sheriff, what's your bottom line proposed budget on here?
I'm sorry, Ms. Evelyn.
What's your bottom line?
Bottom line?
Budget?
I'm not sure. We were never given the numbers for...
No, that on your...
Your proposal, what was the bottom line to your proposal?
We don't have it. We were never given the numbers for costs for employees and health care. That's why you only have that. That's why we only submitted that.
What? What was that again?
No, I mean, I can respond to that. What it was is, we kept asking for, what you're asking for, you're trying to get a bottom line total number. I know what it is. Well, we kept asking for the cost for employees and everything associated with employees. We were never given that. So when we finally submitted our budget to the city manager, we still didn't have those numbers. So that's what you have right there is what we had broke down from the lost in general. I'm not pointing fingers. That's why when you look at those line items, that includes everything except the cost of employees, Ms. Mimi.
So,
You through?
so going back to Evelyn's question, the budget that you proposed to us, this that you gave us, the bottom line is what your budget is without the portion of the employees and the
Yes,
employees'
ma'am.
benefits?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. So Evelyn, you're saying you wanted to know the total budget with the employees?
I want to know his total proposed budget,
Which
not
should
from the
include
city, but from him.
Well, and
But he's saying that's without the employees.
Yes.
The 25 million is without the employees? That's in our
25
book.
million.
What's the total requested budget from the sheriff's office, is what they're asking?
24.
Total requested budget.
That's what I'm trying to get straight,
Because this say 7 million.
he's saying that
That's
this
7
amount
million, and then
here
this million
is
here.
not including.
All right, hang on.
employees.
Let's, yeah, I think what they're trying to come up with is trying to see how far apart we are from the
Well, I'm trying to
requested.
find out.
because our number with employees, all personnel is 20, and OLOS is $27,570,335. That's $27,570,335. $27,570,335 is what came forward to you based on our conclusion of our process from submittal to my office or to the finance office that we're due on February 19th.
Okay,
And actual,
it doesn't matter when, where, or how.
well, it does matter. It-
27.5 million.
Yeah,
That's what's included in your budget.
that's right,
proposal.
yes.
So we know what our.
And I wanted to know from the sheriff, what is your budget proposal request?
I would have to get those because we were not given, when I finally got our final numbers to the city manager, Ms. Evelyn, we did not have the numbers for salaries, benefits, and everything for all the employees of the sheriff's office. That's why what you have is why it's like that.
So you don't have a bottom line proposed budget right now?
No, ma'am, because we didn't get that number. I can get that number for you because we have the numbers, of course, now for the employees.
Are you requesting 27,570?
Oh, I'm sure, no, I'm sure if you looked at the totals, it would probably be a little bit higher than that. Just mainly because of when you start adding like the pharmaceutical increases and
This is it.
operating increases and stuff. Is like,
Increases you covered while we are.
yeah. I mean, that would be a small part of it. I mean,
Pam's going to add it real quick. She's going to add what he submitted to you
While
and
she's
add the
doing that,
personnel.
I'm sorry?
Does he have another question?
Okay, answer your, I apologize.
While you're doing that, Pam, if somebody can tell me what his year-to-date bottom line figure looks like. From an actual perspective.
While they're doing that, I think Councilor Baker's been waiting patiently.
No, that's fine. I think me and the Mayor Pro Tem probably had the same question. I thought I heard, coming from finance, and we're closing in on June 1st, that he was at 89 or 90% of budget. I mean, that puts him on budget.
Yeah.
From the 2016 recommended, is that what we adopted?
He would be on budget if all invoices, outstanding or incumbent dollars have been submitted in a timely manner, he would be then on budget. But it has, and only the sheriff's office would know if they've submitted what, in a timely manner, also if they've submitted all invoices.
Okay. And I understand Councilor Thomas's concern over a couple of the numbers, but for example, on the overtime, it's $450,000 in overtime, and we don't really know how that came about or if that's a good number either, to be honest with you. So I understand. Thank you.
Well, and it also sounds like when the budget was submitted, we had to come up with the line items, when really what we should be concerned with is the overall budgeted amount, whether that's enough to conduct. Councilor Davis.
Sheriff, should we expect any outstanding invoices?
Oh, for pharmaceuticals, it should be.
So that's finance, they should expect pharmaceuticals?
Oh, yes, sir. I mean, just because we're not at the end of the year, yes, sir. Mr. Davis, I don't see anything other than that, the normal things. The only thing you can probably see is pharmaceutical costs and medical service for inmates. And I don't think that being a large amount for medical service for inmates.
City Manager, did y'all just hear that?
No, we were trying to figure out what he's requesting.
Well, the sheriff just said that there's probably going to be some pharmaceuticals and some, what else?
It should be, I would suspect, medical service for inmates. Those are the only two bills that
Is that normal?
I would think so. That everything else would be on track as far as fit food and things like that.
So he's tracking largely on budget.
Do you have
He's
an
requesting,
amount?
here are the numbers that you all requested a moment ago that Pam has gotten. The mayor's recommended budget for the sheriff's office is $27.579335, and the sheriff is requesting $29,296,588. He is requesting an additional allocation of $1,726,253. $1,726,253. That's what he's requesting you additionally allocate to his budget.
Okay, let me.
What's his actual year-to-date?
And his actual year-to-date, as we said, is 90% of what was budgeted in FY16, and we're pulling that.
I happen to have it.
Well, we know that he's at 89.
Actual year-to-date, general fund, $22,101,262.73. OLOS, $2,405,754.10. And in the general fund, it's at 89.18%.
So he's tracking on budget, on what was
I'm just going to ask
budgeted.
this straight up. We've got some officials that have come, and what is different than in the years in the past? How did we get to this point right here?
For which officials? For this official?
Well, elected officials, I just heard this, I'm listening to all this.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get to this point right here? What is different from the years in the past?
Well, the years in the past, we've had, in this particular office, we've had very large overruns, as you know, and we've had to adjust in the fall. And this year, it appears that he is tracking on budget. So it appears that we're budgeting out adequately for his mission.
Well, let me back up, Mayor. Maybe I'm not clear. I'm getting a little frustrated.
Yeah.
In the process to where we're at, it always seems to be a little more orderly. And here we are, Mr. Budget Chair. Today's the last day. And I haven't I can't add all these numbers and pull them all together. I mean, I got to go in the back room for a while to try to understand exactly what I'm approving or what's being requested. And I'm just sorry. I just can't, as a fiduciary, responsible elected official, I cannot go back to my constituents and say that, that I've done my due diligence on this, because it's like Counselor Thomas said, everything's all over the place right now with these numbers. I'm working from like 4 or 5 different sheets here.
Well, let me be
And
very clear.
I feel like there's no process there. I
Let me
just
be
feel like
very clear
that we've
about
got
the
to point where there's
process.
no process here.
Let me be very clear about the process.
In all due respect to the people
Yeah.
making requests, they're supposed to come and make
Right.
requests, and I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, I'm just saying
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working totally different than it's
Well,
been
I-
the process in the past.
I don't know why any of us are confused. I'll just be very candid. We do
I'm
not
not
have...
confused. I don't have anything to
Why
work
anyone's
with.
confused. We do not have, there are 4 elected officials who are currently engaged in litigation with the city regarding the process of budgeting, and they do not participate in the budget process.
Okay.
So we all are aware, the citizens are all aware, this is not news. And so it is very, very difficult when we have 4 elected officials who have contended that the process is not one of which they are required to follow, and it is the one that the charter requires us to abide by, and we are doing what we can to present it to you, and then on the very last day of budget session, one of those elected officials comes forward with information that we were not provided. So you should be frustrated. We're frustrated, but it is the reality that all of us elected officials, which are defendants in that litigation, are faced with.
Mr. Davis, can I make a comment?
Sure.
Sure, I appreciate that. We could sit here and say this all day long, and I mean, I don't have the greatest answers for you, but when we turned this, the budget into Mr. Hughley, if he had turned that budget that we requested over to you, I don't think we would have some of this problem. So when he gives you the budget that we submitted, that's on him. But it's not, it would not have been the last day or the last week, Mr. Davis. That
Well,
would have been a
It
couple
was
of weeks ago.
provided to you, sir.
In all, I disagree with you, but what I need today is, I've asked for the actuals. I don't even have the actuals here. They have the actuals, you might have the actuals, I don't have the actuals, but I've got a proposed budget, I've got a proposed budget, a recommended budget, I got a proposed budget from last year. I don't even know what the actuals were that came in. I'm guessing they were under last year, so that's why the well, I think I've just said enough. Bottom line is, I'm sitting here, I can't make a decision on requests that's come
We've all
before
had
us
our
today.
process hijacked, and it is a very difficult circumstance.
Well,
But I
and-
want to clear up something that was
Mayor-
said that was flatly incorrect. The sheriff's the sheriff's proposed budget was provided in council's thumb drive. So when the mayor recommended the budget, that was in the thumb drive and in the books that you all were provided.
It is in there.
It's in there.
What I've got is an adopted budget for 16, okay, and I've got a recommended budget for 17. I've got a request on a budget over here that I don't know if it's an actual or if it's just, I'm assuming it's the submitted budget that the sheriff's bringing us today, and then I've been asking for an actual. I don't see an actual on here. I got a 2015 and 14 actual, but I have no 16 actual. Well, it says it's a,
A103_March2016.
We're going to send Lionel around to show, and also show him where the sheriff's submitted budget is.
the way I'm reading this, the adopted budget from 16 was in line, even though what we went through last year, and it's recommended on this year with a few changes.
Well, he'll show it to you online, but I've got her printing it. Tiasha Johnson is going to print a copy and bring it to you from the thumb drive.
Well, and I think what we
And
have...
Mr. Chairman, I just got to say, I've been city manager for almost 12 years, and I was deputy city manager for 7 years. The process has not changed. We have, I've followed the same process for my 11 years as city manager, where we have budget kickoffs, and we provide information to all department heads and elected officials. We have budget analysts to assist them along the way. We have a deadline for entering your budget request in the system. And I've worked with, I've worked with 7 mayors, 5 city managers and 2 interim city managers. I've worked with 3 sheriffs. And this is not new to me. And so if the budget requests are due in the system on the 19th, and we've provided and made available to you all of the assistance to help you get there, and then I get something 2 months later on the 19th, and we've moved forward with our process. We cannot hold up our process for those who do not want to cooperate. And so we moved forward, and so you have what you have because we submitted what we had available to us from the prior year.
And I hear what you're saying, I'm not going to argue that point, but I think what we need to focus on at this juncture, there's going to be a lot of rhetoric because there are some unique circumstances surrounding the relationship at this particular point with some of the elected officials and with the budget process. Where we are is we've got a recommended budget. We've seen in the thumb drive the requested budget from the sheriff. We've got a recommended budget by the administration. The current year's budget, FY16 budget, is tracking within budget. We may have some challenges depending on how up-to-date the invoices are, and I have every confidence in the sheriff that these invoices are not going to be over 30 days old. These things are going to be timely. And based on that information, we have a recommended budget that fits within the overall guidelines of the entire city's budget. In my mind, that's what we focus on today. We act on that. If somebody thinks that because there's a line item here and there in a $25 million budget that they want to address, we can address. But there is, as we have seen demonstrated, there is the opportunity for elected officials to move money within their budgets at their discretion. So I think where we are is we either need a request for an ad, or we need to move on, see if there's any other questions about any of the services or anything that the sheriff has presented. So I know Mayor Pro Tem has been patiently waiting. So, Ms. Pugh?
In looking at this, if their year-to-date actual is 24,506,754, that means that we'd have to add 1 or 2 months to that for the rest of the year.
It depends on what they've submitted. Basically, part of the payroll is already posted through last week, so that would be 1.5 months of payroll, and then 2 months of fuel and internal billing, because we would process those at the end of the month, and then they process invoices for their pharmaceuticals and those types of things. So depending on when the last one that they submitted would depend on whether it's 2 months or 3 months. I would have to go back and verify that information. But I do want to make a correction. The amount that was requested, we've recalculated. We believe the amount with the personnel that the sheriff's requesting is $30,729,593, which is a difference of $3,159,258. The sheets that the sheriff...
What's that again? 30 million?
$30,729,593. The sheets that the sheriff has submitted that's labeled Operational Form Sheriff's Office, those top 3 lines, overtime for general and sworn and bailiffs, is not included in the total on the second page. And also the total on the second page should be $7,893,063, where he has $7,892,703. It should be $7,893,063, and then you also have to add those first 3 lines into that total. What's not included, plus the OLOS request of $1,404,210 brings to a total of $30,729,573. Compared to the recommended of $27,409,000. 570,335 for a difference of $3,159,258. And that does include the capital requests from OLOST. What's in the recommended is $250,000, and what was requested was $1,404,210.
But if I calculate correct, with this actual budget being, actual year-to-date expenses being $24,506,754, somewhere in that area. And that's based off 11 months' worth of expenses.
Almost 11 months.
Then his actual year-to-date should come in somewhere around 27,806,000 something.
Depending on whether there's 2 months of invoices to process or 1 month. But-
Right.
And
And if
that,
there's-
the sheriff will have to respond to that.
That's just estimated.
That's correct.
And if it comes in at that estimated amount, then the budget we have in our total line budget will almost cover that. And if it doesn't, even if we had to add some other amount to that, we still shouldn't have to, the budget shouldn't be up at $30 million. You see what I'm saying, Sheriff?
Yes, ma'am.
So I would have a hard problem trying to add the bottom line to be $30 million when it's running now at 24 and projected to close out at 27 or 28.
And part of that request is for capital in the OLOST of 1.4 million. So that's included in the 30 million. So if you back out the capital, the request for operations is 29.3 million.
So I would think that, Councilor Thomas, if we talked about adding anything to the bottom line budget that we have now, the overall budget, that we would have to add approximately $1.2 million to the sheriff's bottom line budget, and that should cover his year-to-date actual plus some increase.
Where are we going to get that?
All right, is there a request to put it on the ad list, and if so,
I'll put it out.
where will it come from? Because that
I
would
don't have
equal
those
about...
answers.
You don't have those answers?
No, I don't.
Okay. The other option, as we've talked about before, is if we did identify some areas that we'd like to address, we have to have a balanced budget to present with an anticipated 60-day reserve by the end of today. Now, we can continue through the first reading of the budget, identify any changes we want to make or any additions or deletions, but at that point, it would be critical that it is accompanied with an offset. But it does, in other words, we don't, I know we seem like we're right up here against the finish line, but we do have a little extra time when we can take a look at some options. I believe that's correct, Ms. Hodge. We just have to make sure that once we make the changes that it remains balanced.
So I would add to the sheriff's budget. Don't we add $1 million or 1.2?
It's your call. Y'all lost me with the numbers.
I got 27,579, and Mr. Jekyll, he's 27,8. 1.2.
All right, there's a request, I think, Ms. Hodge, to add 1.2 million on behalf of the Mayor Pro Tem to...
In addition to the 209 for pharmaceuticals?
No, I don't, I think that's separate.
That's separate.
This is in
1.2
lieu
is
of that
separate.
original
Okay.
recommendation. All right? Any other questions, comments, recommendations? Sheriff, thank you. Thank you,
sir.
folks, for being so patient. Appreciate y'all showing up today. Thank you.
I would like to say this, though, Mr. Budget Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
In the future, when we have a budget presented to us, and if all the departments have not submitted their budget request, and whatever is in the budget that's given to us is just an estimate from the administration, we need to know that up front. And I don't mean that we need to wait till the last day when we're talking about add and delete.
Yes, Councilor Woodson.
Angelique or Pam, I'm a little uneasy with, what just happened. I just need some clarification. At the point where we're at now, two thoughts. If we pass the budget the way it is now in his department, we can always come back and amend it to those numbers that he needs once we know where the money is available, and still pass the budget.
A council's authorized to amend the budget at any time. So if you want us to bring back a budget amendment, we can bring back a budget amendment.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, yeah, like, let's say we pass the budget as it is for him, and then mid-year, based on the information that he gave us and whatever research we've done, then we can amend his budget to meet his needs if it's necessary. Couldn't we do that?
If council chooses to do that, you can amend his budget.
Okay. The other one is, I know that, but you got to get 6 votes. The other one is, was there a reason that we didn't give him the same budget that he had last year?
We did
You did?
allocate the same budget because
Okay.
we didn't have any other information to work off of, because we didn't receive the request until a week before it was presented to council, and at that point in time, we were in the production of the document phase. It would have required us to rework the entire budget, and we just didn't have time to do that to meet the deadline.
Okay, so you just clarify one of my concerns and uncertainties then. Okay, because I think at this late hour, this late minute, I think we should just go ahead with what we have now and then amend it at mid-year when we have a little bit more time to see where we're going to find $1.7 million. Okay.
Councilor Davis?
And, Mr. Budget Chair, the old saying, ask and you shall receive, sometimes that applies here, but I've got it now. Thank you. Sheriff, I've got it now, thanks, and with a little help from Mr. Haynes there, get me on track, and appreciate y'all. Thanks for being patient. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Hodge?
Next on the agenda is the Civic Center Director, Ross Horner.
I'm just guessing I'm not allowed to ask for a 30-minute intermission.
You can ask, but you might not receive. We need a little joke in here.
Welcome, Ross.
Thank you for having me. I promise to be brief. I want to thank you for this opportunity to come in front of you this afternoon and talk a little bit about the Civic Center FY17 budget. Today I'll be talking about two issues. with the Civic Center. One, a reorganization plan that really started approximately 5 years ago, and the ice rink repurposing that have been working on for the summer months. But first, I'd like to talk about your team down at the Civic Center. These 20 individuals are responsible for running the Columbus Civic Center and ice rink and our many events that take place. I'm very proud of these individuals and the accomplishments that they've had, especially since 2011, folding the ice rink into our existing budget. They've also increased revenues across the board, and I've been in front of you before 2 years ago when we made the change with food and beverage to really bring more of a business element to the department, and some of the other aesthetic changes that you've seen. We've also included, increased our revenues and our events and training, and these individuals I'm very proud of. You'll note that we have 2 unfunded positions. They'll remain unfunded for the foreseeable future. I would guess that that remains for years to come, and we have 1 open position that we'll be looking to fill within the year, and I'll discuss that later. I want to highlight very briefly, but I think it is important to note what these 20 individuals, not only what they've accomplished, but what they continue to accomplish. And these are some highlights of our extended team. When I think back to 2011, I think how far we've come. We've not only reduced our staff 40%, it goes from 34 down to 20, but we have sent 5 of our managers through venue management school. This venue management school for us is equivalent to a master's degree in our industry. And I'm happy to say that we have 5 individuals that have acquired that. We've concentrated on training across the board, and you can see that. We've also had an employee of the year, and from a small staff, I think that's important. They're doing more with less, and they're well trained and motivated. One of the things that I'd like to point out is that we have, in a staff of 20, we've performed over 1,200 hours of community service in this community. It ranges from enrichment services to Safe Kids, Paint the Town Pink, West Georgia Cancer Coalition, the list goes on. But these individuals not only do the work during the day for this community, but they're out and about in the community and volunteering. I think many of you know that as you've seen them. We're also proud of the fact that we employ almost 350 part-time people. 70% of our workforce in part-time are current or retired CCG employees. It's important for us because we've been able to keep the continuity of work. It also helps with our relationships with other departments, and they truly are the best employees we can find. We've been able to take part-time employees and move them on to other departments. We have 10 individuals since 2011 that we've identified in our part-time staff that we moved on to other departments. And from the comments that I received from the department heads, it makes us even more proud because they've done a great job for those departments they've moved on to. I'd like to talk a little bit about what we've been moving to for the last 5 years. We identified 5 years ago that we needed to reduce our staff, that we needed to flatten our and make a more horizontal organizational chart. This is how we're working right now. And what we're looking to do is actually formalize our reorganization to better align our department with the business functions that we've taken on. As I've mentioned, food and beverage, parking, merchandising, other areas have led to higher revenues within our department. This, in essence, creates a better organization for us. You'll notice that we don't have an assistant director for the Civic Center. I would never advocate for one because what we need are multiple individuals ready for what's next. When I came here 4 years ago, or almost 5 years ago now, I don't believe that we had that, and it was hard to identify. We were a larger department, and it was hard to identify the individuals within our department ready to move on or ready to take on more responsibility. And we've spent the time between then, not only working with our department, but organizing it correctly so that they are ready for what's next. We need interchangeable facility managers at these levels, not just managers / their title. They need to be interchangeable and need to be able to work across their divisions. And we have that. What this looks like, in essence, money-wise, this will cost our department somewhere around $24,000. And as I note, these managers and coordinator that's splitting up the operations department, it's not a luxury that we can have any longer to have managers move into our department and learn how to be facility managers. We need to be able to have facility managers first. 90% of everyone's job, all 5 of those people are being a facility manager. The 10% of what they do day to day are the skills that they need to be in finance and business, in marketing, operations, to handle the events. That's the 10%, but we need to be able to backfill these positions. And it's important for us to be able to have a base knowledge, something that we've created in our employees over the last 4 or 5 years. It's not a luxury for us to step back and say that we have that luxury to be able to do that over a 3-year period with a smaller staff. How we're going to do this, and I think this goes to Councilor Davis's question, and I want to mention that because we have found this within our budget. We looked at our travel. We looked at historically how we've used travel, and we have used travel and education in a way, as I've mentioned, to make our managers, our current managers, to get that graduate study level with venue management school. We don't have that need as much anymore. We do need to be able to keep our certifications, and we do need to be able to stay current. And we still have money left in the budget to be able to do that. But it is more important for this department on an ongoing basis to be able to be organized correctly. Advertising and advertising trends for us have changed. Social media has changed things dramatically, and non-traditional marketing has really stepped up with all of our events. We've been able to reduce those, but not completely do away with those amounts. Uniforms, we've taken a slight adjustment in our uniforms in the concessions area. As we built up 1.5 years ago, our concessionaires needed the uniforms, and now we're more in a maintenance phase for those uniforms, and I wouldn't advocate for us to have such a high dollar uniform cost for us ongoing because it's more of a maintenance for us. And that did not show up for you. It was very interesting, but I'm going to touch on it. I believe you have it in your handouts where you can see it. What I've included here is, because it is for one thing nice to compare. That's what we do. We compare where we are nationally, we compare where we are locally and regionally. We took some time with IAVM, the International Association of Venue Managers, just from a standpoint to be able to look at, are we in line with like-size arenas, like-size typical markets? We're a Tier 2 market, and also those that have public facilities. There's a lot of facilities, obviously, that have different governance, so we look specifically at those facilities that have the same governance. What we're asking for in this is an opportunity to formally review this reorganization plan, these reclass positions through UGA, and get an actual formal evaluation done so that we can organize our department properly. What I'd like to touch on now is a little bit of good news for the Civic Center. Changes are demonstrated, I think, for us as an enterprise fund financially. Some of the other things, the good stuff, sometimes can be considered the fluffy white cloud that we have out there, but it is a bottom line department, and we understand that. Even when we take on the new ice rink in 2011, we realized we need to be able to make those substantial changes. One of the things that I point out is the ice rink may never actually break even. And we've discussed that before, and what I can say over the 5 years is we've made progress. We've seen those deficits decrease every year since it's been opened, and we've worked on it not only on the expense side, but you also see later on in the revenue side. It's more important for us to have an arena that is functioning properly, that is really truly that entrepreneurial side of our department, to overcome what the ice rink has as a deficit to our department. We understand that. Year to date, we're showing a $66,000 net profit. That doesn't include about $140,000 yet to come in from our anchor tenant sponsorships and from the suites that we did, you approved from the Friends of the Civic Center account. We also are on track to return $200,000 in general fund subsidy that was placed in our budget this year. And I believe that it is important to note that this staff, these 20 individuals that you saw earlier, are the sole reason for that. In closing, about reorganization, I'm not looking for approval today. I'm not coming before you asking for you to approve something for our department. We're asking that we are allowed to be able to go through a formal review process of our reorganization, and my hopes is that we can end up with 5 facility managers that are interchangeable, what we have trained them, worked towards, so that we're able to backfill these positions. In my mind, when that happens, these will all be graded out at G20 positions, which is the $24,000 that you saw earlier. Are there any questions on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilor Allen.
It was a good presentation, Ross. I think it.
Oh, I'm not done. I don't want you to think I'm done. I'm sorry.
So far. I got a question on the slide regarding reorganization where you have the pay grades.
Yes.
And you talk about the 24,000 funding. And then the next slide, it looks to me like you're telling us where you're going to come up with that funding for the 24,000.
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a hard time justifying taking travel, advertising, uniforms, and moving that over to salaries. I don't, because you're going to have to cut travel, advertising, uniforms every year for $24,000 a year to make those adjustments.
And I should have stated that it is something that we've looked at that can be duplicated from year to year, and it doesn't take into account that we're tracking with increased revenues. As I said, we have a net profit right now, and I would gather that point that we would start adjusting based on our new revenue sources. That if we needed to increase, that we would make those adjustments from either revenues or other expenses.
Okay, so year one, it would be advertising, uniforms.
Yes, yeah.
But year two, it'd be something else.
It could be, and I would guess that the trend in advertising isn't gonna change. We're still leaving ourselves money in each one of these line items. We're not doing away with them for a reason. We want to make sure that there's some money left in there, and it's based on the last couple of years of historical payments out of those specific line items.
Well, I appreciate your folks, and the events I've attended, they do a great job. I mean, they really do a wonderful job. I guess I'm having a problem jumping from a grade 15 to a 20, and then from a 17 to a 20.
Mm-hmm.
I understand you want to balance them out and get them all even,
Mm-hmm.
but it may be it may not happen this year. It may not. It's going to be a while. Is that what you're telling us? This is something you just want to start working on?
No, I actually had this in the plan to come forward last year, but we weren't, because we were still in our transition with food and beverage. I wanted to make sure that economically and financially for our department that we had a basis for it. I feel like this is the way we, I can be honest right now and say this is the way we work right now. I just don't have them, I just don't have people in the right seat on the bus. And if we were going to backfill these positions, in the same way that I believe it was last year when I had a correctional officer that retired, and I had to quickly come back in to reclass that position as a carpenter because I needed a carpenter. I didn't need a correctional officer. If my carpenter leaves today, tomorrow I need a carpenter. And the same thing for an electrician that we were hiring at a different position. We need to be able to backfill these positions with the right people, I guess, and with the right base of knowledge. I think without making these positions what they are today, backfilling them is the right way. And I should state, and I'm sure my employees are actually watching this right now. I am not doing this for individuals. I'm not trying to give a pay raise. I'm not trying to take care of people who, for me, come on a Saturday night and work till 3 in the morning and come right back on Monday and work a full day. I'm not taking care of them because there's employees all over this city that do that exact same thing, and I understand that and they understand that. This, for me, is a transition that we've moved to have a base knowledge of facility managers, that's what we need. I'm very, very fortunate, and I think the people that are in these positions are very fortunate that they have moved in that direction to become what we need right now. I'm concerned that as an organization about backfilling and making sure that we're organized correctly.
Okay, Pam or Ms. Angelica, could you give me the salary range between a 15 and a 20, 17 and a 20? I assume you're talking about, Ross, moving them from the current 15 to the starting salary of a 20?
Yes, yeah.
And a
Because
17 to
that's
a
how we
starting-
would be hiring somebody coming in new. I'm hoping the people that are in these positions stay forever.
Well, you
But-
understand
Yes, yep, absolutely.
where we are. I mean,
Absolutely.
The starting salary of a 15 is $35,480. Starting salary of a 17 is $39,163. And the starting salary of a 20 is $45,417.
This estimate of 24,000 includes benefits as well.
Well, I don't want to be redundant, but it concerns me greatly that we're taking advertising, uniform, and other dollars and transferring it over to salaries. And then you're hoping that you can make that up in the second year by increased revenue. And it's hard for me to get there.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Director Horner, and my question kind of dovetails on Councilor Allen. So how much of it, looking forward, how much each and every year, how much of these funds would be self-generated within the enterprise fund, and how much might be subject to a supplement from the city? Which, if that's the case, I have the same concern Councilor Allen has. I don't see that really being the way to go.
Well,
But if it's self-generated within the enterprise fund, that's a different issue.
If I was coming from a different position today, I would come realistically and ask you to fund forever the Columbus Ice Rink. And I would ask for those funds to be placed out of the general fund to fund the recreational center, the public good that sits next to us. But I'm not asking that because I believe that it's demonstrated that we are on track. We've made such substantial changes.
Oh, no question, yeah.
And I'm gonna point out that the ice rink was built at a time when the arena was facing, systemic deficits for years of general fund subsidies. And I believe that this staff and the way that we're organized better accounts for that. So do I believe that this is going to be replicated? Yes.
Okay.
Because I think that's my responsibility and that's my job, is to set us up this way. Their job is to perform the work and follow along on this journey, and I think they have. And I wouldn't have done this 2 years ago. I saw this 4 years ago. I put it in my 90-day statement when I first started that we weren't organized correctly, that we had too much staff, that we needed to be right-sized, that we needed employees that had a base knowledge in facility management. And I think that we've moved this way, and I feel comfortable as the department head standing here saying this can be replicated. And it's not based on, nobody's light is on, it's not based on Elton John. Although Elton John was a great show for us, it is not accounting for. If I felt that this was Elton John, I would say I'll come back in 10 years when we get another show like that. But this is something that can be replicated. We saw that last year in our deficit that was projected last year of $390,000. Much of that was either center plate payments or the ice rink deficit. The ice rink deficit last year finished over $200,000. We're showing that we've cut into that dramatically.
And if these changes were all on the Civic Center side, you wouldn't see that, you wouldn't really have a problem.
Yes.
I mean, that would be much more self-supporting, I guess, would be the right way to frame it.
The ice rink, $90,000, and I'll talk about the ice rink, I think, in more depth, that I hopefully gives you an opportunity to see how well the staff is doing over there, and the user groups, how they're coming along to help us run this facility. But I'll have that later.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Moving on, okay. The ice rink. As mentioned, the ice rink was built and opened in April of 2011. During a time when the arena was having trouble, as I said, financially. It was at that point that the staff and we all understood that we needed to make very substantial changes. Many of those changes came in the face of lowering staff numbers and also decreasing our expenses in utilities. I am happy to say that the staff has bought into those changes, but so have our user groups. We've spent the last 4 years working with our user groups to find good common balance and common ground in running the facility. I'm hoping this is easier to read than it is on my page, but I wanted to point out where we are year to date with the ice rink. The ice rink expenses show that 65% of our expenses come in the form of utilities. We do have 2 full-time employees at the ice rink, and we use part-time labor, as well as being augmented by arena labor, of course. But what's allocated to the ice rink in expenses year to date is $350,000+. The majority of that is in utilities. The revenues for the ice rink have pretty much stayed consistent. Though the pie has probably gotten bigger over the years, we see more revenue coming in. The breakup is very similar, with a third of our revenue coming from CHA, a third coming from public skating attendance, and a third coming from other programming. It's important to note that on that other programming, which is the green part of the pie, about half of that comes from birthday parties that we do. So birthday parties have been very popular, and it's been part of our public skating revenue as well. Okay, something's not showing up. There's one line that's not showing up, but you are seeing the dots on there. This shows the last 3 comparison of rink hours. These are hours of rental from either CHA or private ice rental. You can see that, though it's hard to see fiscal year 14, you can see each year that the hours have increased. We're renting more hours per month from the year previous. And you can also please note that it really peaks between September and April, which really coincides with the school year. The public skating attendance mirrors that same increase. We've had increases each month over the previous year, and with really a bigger upswing between the months of November through February. You can see that every year we've had a much better year than the year before. But again, if I drew a line in September and April, you'd see that really during the school years is the highest utilization period. So really in consultation and this has been a 3-year process in consultation with the user groups over at the ice rink. We've discussed with them this idea, how can we increase the utilization in the summer? Obviously, when we're seeing those kind of graphs, it makes us start to think, well, what can we do? Can we get more people in? Can we increase the revenue and the usage in the summer? And we've tried different things. It's not happening, and we can see when it follows along with the hours of usage and also with public skating, it's really crossing over. So with the user groups, and that's CHA and figure skating, Cottonmouth, and others, we've decided to take a look at repurposing the rink. We discussed this a couple years ago. This year, the user groups have actually said, look, we're having trouble when school is out filling that ice time. And so they've said, we want a break. And it's just natural that an arena or an ice rink needs some downtime for maintenance. We've just had a failed chiller tower here in the last month that if this would have happened during December, we would have lost both sheets of ice, and we would have lost it probably for a month. It was a difficult thing for us to be able to get fixed, and it demonstrates that maintenance does need to be done to these facilities, and we do need to be able to take the ice out to do that maintenance. We've also discussed new revenue streams over at the ice rink. Obviously, closing the gap of 90,000 or 100,000 or more, we need to be looking at doing things differently. And with the ice out, that gives us the opportunity to look at those new revenue streams, whether they're dances, family reunions, all-school reunions, the types of things that we do in the arena, but we can do less expensively for the user group. We've had, obviously, if we take the ice out, we will have somewhat of a cost savings, not just to the ice rink, but mainly to the arena. The arena, for reference, is the utility keeper for keeping the ice in. So the ice is kept in the ice rink by the utility usage that's held into the arena. And finally, we'd like to look at new programs, and we've discussed this with the Cottonmouth, with CHA, and others. This might take hold as floor hockey for those that can't skate yet, or skating is not something that they're very good at yet, and they want to try hockey. They can do that with floor hockey. Maybe it's lacrosse, maybe it's soccer, something else, but it's a beautiful building, and we intend on using it, not letting it stay dark. So really, and I think this goes back to your point, Counselor, defining success for us as a department. We talk a lot about it as staff. What is success? We've been working towards reorganizing and organizing ourselves towards that success. We're seeing it financially, and we know as an enterprise fund and as an entrepreneurial department, bottom line is how are we doing financially? But We feel like we've had common common ground with our user groups, not only in the arena, but mainly in the ice rink. We found that balance that needs to be done. So I believe that repurposing of the ice rink is not only something that needs to be done, I think it's going to be beneficial for the winter months too. And I also hope you agree, and I don't know if Councilor Allen does, but I also hope you agree that that having a well-structured department that is ready for what's next, that has people with a base knowledge of what they need to move on to the next level, or just be able to provide the level of service that we've become accustomed to with the smaller staff from 34 down to 20 is not a luxury that we have anymore. You can blame me later, but we have the right size department. We need people in the right seat on the bus, ready for what's next, motivated and prepared. That's it. That's all I got for you.
That's it, huh? Well, Mr. Horner, I tell you, I imagine everybody feels the same way, and they'll probably chime in. I can't tell you how pleased I am that you're running those facilities. And I'm glad you had an opportunity to explain, because I know in a lot of the news releases and the little snippets, they talk about subsidizing the Civic Center, and I'm glad you got a chance to point out that part of that was paying for a departure of our previous vendor, which was Centerplate, which was a huge chunk, and the fact that the ice rink also puts some added pressure. But the Civic Center is actually run, I think, as well as I've ever seen it run. And I do have one question, and this, I won't put you on the spot, but I mean, it's a management type question on a reorg. Draw a discrepancy, if you would, or a difference between rewarding folks and how this positions you to raise your revenues going forward. Because I think if it's an investment, and if those folks, if the reorg provides those folks an opportunity to plug into a higher level, and if that generates in some way an opportunity for them to help raise the revenue, then it becomes a return on an investment. And then it's certainly, I know that would certainly answer some of Mr. Allen's.
Well, I think if it was if monetarily, I think if money was the motivating factor, we probably wouldn't have many of our skilled employees working in consolidated government. I think what people are looking for are those other items. You want autonomy. You want to feel like you're part of a team.
Right.
You want those are the things that everyone's looking for. As soon as somebody comes to me and says, I don't get paid enough money to do this, they probably need to go. And so we have a staff that we provide some of those other things. They provide it within their own management team. Money is not the motivating factor. For me, I can take each one of these individuals and put them off to the side, because the position in backfilling, the position being organized correctly, allows us to be able to hand off events properly. The reason why we need an event services manager is to split up the operations division right now, because the operations in an aging facility, our arena's over 20 years old and our ice rink is coming up on 5. They need to be maintained. If you don't do the maintenance in the first half of their life expectancy, you'll never catch up. And so being able to split that up and then also provide an event services manager who is motivated, that has that same level of base knowledge as the operations, but can do that with the events is very important. It's a level that we project to our building users, to our promoters, and it's also internally what provides for the success for the people that are below them. If I went back to our organizational chart, it is horizontal for a reason. It is flatter for a reason, so that not only I'm not looking at individuals for what's next right up above them, I need to be able to say, I have an area to fill over here, and I need to be able to bring you over here to that position. So if somebody's going to fill our facility manager of event services, and I need to take the facility manager from ticketing, that should be done. And if I don't have that in my staff right now, we won't have the continuity of work. And that's to me, it's the biggest thing. I do want to point out one of the things that seemed to, over this past year, we've paid over $400,000 in sales tax so far this year. I think that demonstrates that we're having this impact, but when we look at that, that's replicable, and it will be in the years to come.
Good deal. Councilor Barnes.
Boss, I run out of accolades and things to say about you because you've done such a marvelous job, but I think this, what you're doing now, is definitely forward-thinking, and took a lot of thought to do something like this. But in the military, what we do, we reward personnel, we challenge them, and we do that so we're able to use them in a multiplicity of ways, and that's what you're doing here. So appreciate all that you're doing as far as the Civic Center. I think this is forward thinking. I do understand where Gary's coming from.
I do too.
I definitely understand where Gary's coming from, but I think this is moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Councilor Baker.
Yeah, and I think you do a super job too, Ross. And I just want to clarify, I wasn't being critical at all when I was asking about where you can self-generate the funding.
Yeah.
Because originally, the ice rink was not part of your enterprise fund. So when I say that, it's in the context really that I don't mean to penalize you for some of the operations at the ice rink. We were looking somebody to stick the losses with, and you got the short straw. So, you've done a super job helping pull out of that hole. So I'm certainly willing to give you the leeway on doing what you think you need to do.
Well, this staff has taken it as I can say internally, this staff has taken it as a challenge, and I think when the challenge was there, we weren't completely equipped for it, and we probably demonstrated that in the first year or so. You spent a lot of time talking to people in council chambers, probably because we weren't fully equipped at that time. I believe that we are fully equipped and that we're operating this way, and I just want to be able to demonstrate that on an organizational chart.
Thank you. Councilor Huff.
Great job. Great job. I'm fascinated with what you do and how you do it, because growing up, going to college and traveling through different venues, I've always been amazed at the size and the abilities to bring staff together and attract certain type of entertainment to the building. But a great job. My question is, if you could give me just a quick update on the vendor piece and how well it's working.
Well, I can tell you this from some of the new revenue streams. I did make some notes because I was hoping to highlight that, and I do hope to come back in September with the entire staff, our building users, all of our building users, and our tenants, the professional teams, and actually do an annual report to council, and so you can hear it from their mouths, so it's not just coming from me, and also not just see our staff up on a slide, but see them in person. Year to date, some of our new revenue streams that we have not seen before that are starting to show up, and these will be replicable because it's based on per person net profits that are coming in. We've brought in $90,000 in parking so far this year. We've brought in over $200,000 in facility fees. We've brought in over $25,000 in merchandising percentages. We've brought in close to $500,000 in food and beverage year to date. That will grow. For reference, when we had the previous vendor in for food and beverage alone that included merchandise, was the highest amount that we had received from them is $175,000.
And
so
what did you say what that?
It's 500 plus 25, around 525. We have folded in a new food and beverage coordinator, and if I pulled up the organizational chart and I and I didn't have us organized this way, he would just be sitting in a block somewhere. Right now, I have him answering to somebody, but I don't have that organized the right way. These new business functions are bringing in new revenues. They're going to continue to come in. We're seeing that our new contract with Ticketmaster in the areas of rebates with Elton John alone was over $60,000 that we brought in from our Ticketmaster rebates. Now that's Elton John, but Elton John really is equivalent to 2 or 3 good shows that we've been having, and we're seeing increased programming, increased events. So it's just a matter of people coming in. We look at it from our decision making. This is not getting into too much of what we do and how we do it, but what we look at for every person coming in the door, how much are we increasing our net profit from? And we're seeing those triple from where they were 5 years ago. So it's because of these new revenue streams and this business function that we've added in.
How difficult was it when you had Lady Antebellum to restructure the hall to fit what they asked for?
Well, that we'd have to ask the operations manager, but...
That was just amazing to me. The different pieces with the number of people that wanted to attend, and you had the opening below the stage where they could mix and mingle. You had standing room. Just an amazing night. I mean, all the events have been wonderful, but that's one of the ones that got me from an operations standpoint as far as the layout. And they had full access to the audience with the runway, you know, the long staging and everything.
We've had some great technical shows over the past few years, and the staff is equipped to handle those needs from the promoter, and having a professional staff projecting themselves to people like Live Nation and AEG and House of Blues, those things are very important, and because they're very important to the promoter.
Thank you, sir. The public's very happy with you. Thank you. And we are too.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Davis.
Mr. Horner, you've met some challenges over the year, and you've done a good job, so really appreciate it. We've been here before with many requests, and you've always came out a shining star. So with your record of coming through in the clutch, I think I would be more than inclined to support you here as well. I think you've earned that, and you've done a good job there. So we appreciate you, and I think what I need to do, Deputy City Manager Hodge, Madam Finance Director, is in this case there may be some instances that I talked about earlier on the add and delete list or the delete list. In this case, he's using that money somewhere else, as you stated. So here's an example of where he's using his some of his allocations in a different way. I would not include that. Can you make that discernment throughout the budget? Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Ross, thanks for what you do, buddy.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. I thought this was going to be my opportunity for the first time to back cleanup, but thank you.
And let me just say, Mr. Chairman, and to you, Councilor Davis, as he indicated, it is not in the budget at this time, and he was sharing with you that he wants to proceed forward with UGA and get the work done, and if UGA signs off on it, then he would want to proceed with it, and although you will have approved his budget, he will come back, and it may be outside of this budget process, but he will be able to handle it within the approved budget.
By cutting the items that he indicated.
Pardon?
By cutting the items that he
Exactly.
indicated. Travel,
And so-
uniforms.
Yes, sir.
That's fine.
And so it's not in here at this time, but let's say he could come back, he might be back before you in August or September, and you will know what he's talking about. Yeah. Yes.
It's fine.
Next, there is a representative here from the Clerk of Municipal Court, so we'll go ahead and have Princella address council.
Okay. Oh, she's in trouble. There she is.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for seeing me. I'm sorry, I do apologize for being late. Mrs. Bishop called me. She could not be here, unfortunately, so I still want to come over and represent the office and tell you what our concerns are. Our main issue is our overtime that was not allowed in the budget, the FY17 budget, and I want to discuss that. It is imperative that we have the overtime because we have clerks that sign warrants 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for the city. It's part of our job duty, our job description to sign these warrants, and this will free up the time for the judges also. Without this overtime, I cannot compensate the clerks who are signing these warrants, any kind of compensation. I cannot allow them the overtime because the office is very short-handed right now. We need the clerks available to be in the office. This overtime do compensate them a lot for the hours that they have to give up with their families to sign these warrants. They're signing these warrants even on holidays, weekends. They're not even allowed to leave town because it's mandated that they be within our jurisdiction to sign those warrants. So I'm here on behalf of Mrs. Bishop to ask that the overtime do be added back to our FY17 budget if it's possible.
And Ms. Jacobs, I think it's already on the ad list, and so it's unless somebody changes their mind, it's on there.
Well, I was told that it would be added, but still to come to the, council, so it could be told
Well,
to
the Mayor Pro
also.
Tem told me to be very nice to you because you're her cousin, so I'm just saying yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
I'm
you
sorry
very
to
much.
hold up your time. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
So at this time, we can go through the healthcare update, or we can go through the add-delete list. If you want to hear from Director Hollowell, we'll go through an update on the healthcare.
I mean, I don't think it's going to take very long to go through the add-delete list. There's not much on there. The one thing I would suggest is we've got a couple of days indicated that it's eating into the fund balance on the fees for Parks and Rec, and then the community schools, and we're going to divert that to an offset through the natatorium operating hours, or operating budget.
So do you want to go through the add-delete list
What's the
first?
pleasure of the Budget Review Committee? Let's go ahead and go through that.
Okay. And I'll just walk through each item. The first item was for Parks and Rec. It was to remove the youth revenue fees, and that would have an offset on the natatorium, so the fund balance impact would be 0.
Is there a motion to approve the elimination of the youth sports fees? Both. We're going to, but this is the final day, so we're going to make a decision on these items now. Councilor Allen.
When I made this motion, I think there was a handout that said 50,000. And I think Councilor Thomas clarified, and in the mayor's statement, it's 60,000. So I would like to make a motion to clarify that we change this to 60,000, 60,100, I guess is what's in the, is that in the budget?
The 50,000 is what the increase in the budget revenue line was.
Okay, but so we don't have to change it to 60?
No, it's 50 was the revenue offset.
So
Was what, the revenue was increased by $50,000. I think when James made the presentation with 60,000, there were some additional teams that were identified that increased it to 60, but what was included in the recommended budget was 50.
Well, and that is, and it kind of a moot point, because if you eliminate the increase in the fees, and then the offset is whatever that amount would have been, is to be applied to the operating budget for the natatorium.
That's correct.
So I mean, you're good, as long as you eliminate those fees, whether it's 50 or 61.
Well, I just want to make sure.
We get them all.
Yeah, I don't want to give $10,000 extra dollars to the natatorium, is what I'm trying to stop.
Gotcha.
So therefore, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we delete the team fees as proposed.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is it second?
Second.
All right, any discussion, any questions? They will, and they'll tell us, I think, in the final budget as to how it impacted the operating budget for the natatorium. All right, and keep in mind that to pass anything on the add delete list, it takes a true majority, so it has to be 6 votes. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
While I have the mic, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I would make a motion that we delete the community schools revenue increase that was subject to be transferred to the natatorium.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
You delete the full amount?
Yeah, the $4 per child, I believe is what it was. Motion. Yes, sir, Councilor Davis.
I understand what's going on here, but I just don't, I think the city needs to be real careful about being in the daycare business. And, I'd like to remind the council, if you go back all the way, many years back, where this was actually a item that was generating revenue, but over the years, it has been a slow subsidy of over $300,000. So I'm not going to support this, but maybe a slight reduction I could.
Could I clarify?
Certainly.
I think what we're doing here is we are denying the ability to assess the after-school program by increasing their fees and then shifting that amount to the natatorium. That's what we're doing. I don't have a problem increasing the fees of the after-school program. I just don't want them transferred to the natatorium for that funding.
Well, it's all part of the same fund.
No,
It comes out of Parks and Recs.
But this is telling them not to use it. This motion is telling them not to use this increase, or denying them the ability to use the increase for the natatorium.
Okay, I misunderstood. I misunderstood the motion as well. I thought it was to eliminate the increase. And the reason I was in support of that is because I think that may be an appropriate move eventually, but I didn't feel like we had enough time to assess what the impact was. Because we have some people who are single parents who have 2 or 3 or 4 kids in there, and a $4 a child increase could mean 16, bucks a week if she has 4 children. Well, I mean, the motion on the floor is to clarify, is to do what?
Well, yeah, you'd have to, yeah. I think the way this was presented to us was a projected revenue increase of $200,000. When I asked the question, they were going to transfer the $200,000 to the natatorium for that funding. So it was not, the $200,000 generated was not supporting the after-school program at all.
No,
So if council feels like we need to support the after-school program with this fee increase, I'm okay with that. I just did not want that $200,000 transferred to the natatorium. That's my concern.
Well, and isn't it semantics? Because if you plug that hole and you all of a sudden make it solvent, then the additional funding could be used within Parks and Rec for the natatorium. It
Not
wouldn't
if
be
we tell them
replaced.
not to.
It's all in the general fund, so it's all part of the general fund picture. So it's not necessary, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's not like the funding comes in and it goes to the natatorium. The funding comes into the general fund, which allows each budget to be at the level that it is recommended. So it's all general fund dollars. And what would happen is, basically, we're having to subsidize the after-school program with other funding because there's a $300,000 deficit if you take the revenues and the expenditures of the after-school program. So if you increase the fees, it takes less subsidy, and you can use that to operate the natatorium. So it's kind of all part of the same
But
fund.
if you do that, Pam, you're still operating at a $300,000 deficit.
You would be operating at a $100,000 deficit, because the subsidy of the other $200,000 could be used for the natatorium, because it's all general fund.
The $200,000 is not being used to offset the cost of operating the after-school program. It's going over to the natatorium.
Well, it's all
So
part of
your
the general fund.
deficit is
so
less in the natatorium. Your deficit is still $300,000 in the after-school program.
Well, it's all part of the general fund, so it doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, if we were to pull the revenues, if this was in place, we would pull after-school revenues, and we would pull the after-school program expenditures, and it would have a $100,000 deficit. We would look at the natatorium and the revenue that's generated from the natatorium and the expenditures of the natatorium, and that would be the natatorium's deficit, which is all part of the general fund. So there's taxes and sales taxes that go into the general fund that support everything in the general fund.
Okay, at the end of this fiscal year we're talking about today, are you going to come back and show us the revenues and expenses of the natatorium, and you're going to include in that the $200,000 from the after-school program?
No, sir, we wouldn't.
Why wouldn't you do that?
Because it's not a revenue source to.
If you're transferring it over there,
We're not transferring it, because it's like going into one checking account and
I'm-
expenditures going out.
but I asked you a question. I said, where's this money going? And you said it's being used to help offset the cost of the natatorium. You said we're increasing the fees on the after-school program, and it's going to generate $200,000.
That's correct.
And we're going to transfer that to the natatorium.
It's being.
So it's not helping the after-school program at all.
Well, the revenue.
I understand it's an accounting shell game.
Mhm. Well,
But it's, I guess it's semantics, but I mean, it's not helping the after-school program, even though we're using the ability to generate funds on the backs of the after-school parents to fund the natatorium.
and I guess we could have worded it differently. We could have said, we're going to increase the fees of the after-school program so it makes them more self-sufficient, which frees up $200,000 of a subsidy to go to the natatorium. But
How
it's
can
all
it free up? How can it free
It's all a
up?
subsidy. It's all a general fund subsidy. Every operation in the general fund doesn't generate the revenue to provide the service in the
It's
general
similar
fund.
to the Corda issue. It's very similar to the Corda issue. When they were going to raise fees, and Councilor Baker said, I want the fees that are raised at Corda to go to pay for the additional positions.
Okay.
And it's the same,
It's the same
deal.
thing. Let's keep the $200,000 in the after-school program.
We can do that.
What's the difference?
If I could just, and this is all good discussion, we're kind of talking about the same thing, but take a shot at, it's all revenue enhancement. Raising fees, whether it's Corda, for the boat docks, or any of that, it's just revenue enhancement. And for every dollar that you enhance revenue, you relieve pressure of a program or service we're providing, of which we do not make profit. We're necessarily providing at a, quote, deficit, because very little that the city does provides any profit whatsoever, a Corda or after school or whatever. And so anytime we generate revenue for the after-school program, or for, the T-League fees, which is on the table to be taken off, and I completely understand and respect. But all of that was to increase revenue so that other things were running at less of a deficit to provide more revenue for those services to be provided. And that frees up monies that the general fund can use for at least this 1 year, because I think we all believe if properly funded, the natatorium is going to start like the ice rink, and it's going to be managed properly, and it's going to start running less of a deficit and hopefully someday cover itself. And so this is sort of a stopgap way to find those revenues to lessen that deficit because you've done revenue management. So that's all. And I think in the letter, in trying to explain the two things, it may look like we're transferring it, but really it's revenue management that relieves the deficit of the natatorium, if that explanation helps.
Well, I understand. It concerns me that we would transfer $200,000 to help the natatorium, and then next year you would come and show us the revenue and expenses of the natatorium, and you would not include that $200,000 in there.
No,
But even though they had the benefit of using it, we supplemented them by an additional $200,000.
We're supplementing the natatorium by much more than that.
I understand that. But you're taking all the things that the mayor just mentioned, and we're shifting it over to the natatorium.
You're reducing the deficit of the others. You're reducing the deficit of the after-school program, you're reducing the deficit of all of those other
You
things.
can't, I don't see how you can count it twice, Mayor.
You're not counting it twice, you're counting it that once, and that leaves, think of it like a savings account. I don't know how to say this. If somebody's paying your light bill, you're not having to take it out of your savings account, right? So if you do revenue enhancement, your son gets an after-school job, I don't know, and he starts paying the light bill and he starts paying the gas bill for you, you're not having to take it out of your savings account anymore because you've had revenue enhancement coming into the family. Without that after-school job, you're having to take from your savings account to pay the light bill and to pay the gas bill. So that's really all that's being done, is that you're reducing or you're creating revenue to pay necessary expenditures, whether that's the after-school program or any of the other things that we've talked about, and that frees up the money that's in your savings account to be used to, pay for the water bill. So.
And at the end of the year, on your 1099, on your filing your taxes, you should include how much he gave you to pay your
I guess
light bill.
depending on how old he is.
But I'm just saying.
He's under 18, no.
You don't count it extra income, right?
Well, I think an easier way to do it is, there's two choices. One is just to go ahead and eliminate the increase on the after-school fees. The other way is just simply to reduce, put on the delete list, to delete $200,000 of funding for the natatorium. That's the same effect. I thought we were going to just eliminate the fees, because again, it's just me. I think it's a little premature. I think we don't really know what the total impact's going to be on some of these parents who have nowhere else to turn for affordable health care, child care. So what's your motion?
I'll acquiesce to what you just said.
No, I'm not trying to do that.
I'll make a motion that we delete the fees until we have a better understanding of the economic impact on the parents.
So the motion is to eliminate the $4 increase on the after-school program.
Right.
Is there a second? I know, all right, we do have some folks queued up for discussion. Councilor Baker.
No, I'm done. I guess the same issue applies to the tennis center expansion. And I think one of the things that's causing a little bit confusing, as in some of the budget information, there was a direct allocation, if you will, between a fee increase and where it was going to be used. But with the expansion at the tennis center, for example, will require an additional staff person or persons out there, and even the increased fees won't cover them. So it was, to me, just logical to leave those fees there to cover those, to run the expansion out there. So.
Agreed. Thank you. Mayor Pro.
July 1, they could mix the money around however they wanted to. We would never know it.
You won't be able to tell where that dollar came from.
That's right.
All right, thanks. Mayor Pro Tem.
I was going to suggest that maybe we just increase the fees by $2. Because if it gets transferred over to the school system, I think their fees are like 40-something and ours 20-something. So if those programs get transferred over to the school district, it's gonna go up approximately $20 per child. Versus if we increase ours just $2.
Is that help me with the Robert's Rule of Order, is that a substitute motion?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sir? All right, we need a second on the substitute to
You gotta
raise
get a
it.
second first.
All right. All right, Councilor Davis has seconded it. Any discussion on the $2 increase on those? Which, now, my understanding is this $200 increase is to just cover the deficit of the after-school program, right? Councilor Thomas is to the motion.
In the material that we were given, it says that in the after-school programs, the revenue budgeted in FY16 was $1.2 million. Budgeted revenue in FY17, $1.45 million. Then in the mayor's recommended budget, the cost for community schools in FY16 was $1,513,000, and in FY 2016, the recommended is $1,497,000. So the revenue looks like it's coming in at $250,000 more, but the budget for the community schools itself is going down by $16,000. So I'm not sure that we are actually looking at needing an increase at this time to meet the budget that's here. The budget that's here is less than the budget that was adopted for current year. The other piece that I want to remind you of is that when Dr. Worsley was here making his presentation, and I asked him if he had had conversations with the school district about taking over this program, and he said he had some months ago, and they were talking about one school, taking over one school, not all of the schools that we have in here. So it would seem to me that perhaps at this point in time, maybe we don't need to increase that fee at all. And it won't go to the natatorium, but from what it is showing here, the expenses are less.
Let me just clarify, the $1,450,000 includes the additional $200,000. So the revenue projections of $1,450,000 includes the increase of the $200,000.
So we're saying that the adopted budget for 17 would be $50,000 more than what we had in 16, right?
That's correct.
But the expenses are going down in the budget by $13,000.
Right. The expenditures are $1,497,000, so we're still would be operating at a deficit for the after-school program. Part of the differences is the reduction in the employer retirement for general government, and they must have had, and about $9,000 is a change in personnel. So
we would still be operating at a deficit, but at a less deficit than we are operating this year.
Yes,
This year,
ma'am.
we're at
That's correct.
1.513, and, so we have a deficit. So I'm not sure that the case has been made, in my mind, to increase at this time those fees.
The deficit would be...
So I'm speaking against the motion.
Okay. Councilor Davis, to the motion.
And I was just going to say, I mean, when you look at Parks and Recs as a whole, in respect to the list that was given, there's only so many things you can do to generate revenue to fund Parks and Recs as a whole. And whether it's reallocation or utilizing funds in a different way to support your budget, you can look at that from different angles, but I would say on the community school program, if you look at it historically, the historical number shows that it's going to continue to be a burden to the city from a subsidy standpoint, and sooner or later, you're going to have to do something with that, even if it's not allocated in a perceived direction. But I did want to make that note, Mr. Budget Chair, that it's not just that's not a constant number. That number continues to escalate and continues to go up every year.
Yes, sir.
So there has to be something regardless if the subject conversation is taking place. I think it's an area that needs to be fixed. And then ultimately that money will go back into the pot and utilized somewhere. But like I said, there's only so many places you could go, and we've done that in some areas to generate revenue within parks and recs to be utilized on whatever the need is.
Okay, thank you. All right, there's a substitute motion to increase the after-school fees by $2 in each tier, and it's been seconded. So all in favor of that motion, please say aye. Any opposed? No. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? 5-2. All right, which brings us back to our original motion, was to eliminate for this year any increase in the after-school fees. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, raise your hands if you're for it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's inconclusive, so it will stay in there. Okay. Vote. Yes, ma'am.
Say that the revenue for the Parks and Rec adopted budget in 16 was $2,069,000, and the adopted, what is proposed for 17 is $2,508,000. So it's going up, $450,000, so.
And, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I may, so as you're going through the LEAP, and we spoke about it earlier, about the aquatic center and the hours. I know that you did the initial 50,000, and if you do you did the initial 50,000, and if you do the 200,000, of course, then we'll start scaling back the budget that was submitted in the mayor's budget for aquatic center. It started at $1,242,000, and so if you take the 250,000 off, we'll be at 992,000. And so we were at 850,000.
We were.
And so I just want to remind you of where we will be with funding the aquatic center, which means that the hours at 850,000 was 45 hours. And so at 992,000, you'll add some hours.
Won't be substantially more.
Exactly. It could be 50 hours. And so I just wanted you to be mindful as you make your vote, how that.
Duly noted. Yeah, we are getting close back to we're getting closer to, I think, the original recommendation at like
For the
49.
aquatic center. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, Pops, where we are, or Councilor Barnes, where we are is we had, actually the first vote was inconclusive as well. The substitute motion was to increase it $2 per head, per child. That was inconclusive. We went to the second vote, which was to eliminate the increase altogether. As the city manager indicated, by eliminating that increase altogether, that's going to take us down to just under $1 million in funding for the auditorium, which is, it's really almost, it's not a whole lot more than what we originally had budgeted for the 49 hours, so it will have an impact. But those are the two motions. Both were inconclusive. I'll call it again. Well, That's right, it wasn't, it didn't pass. But we'll call the other one on the, on the elimination of the fees, if you're ready, prepared to vote. Yep, to eliminate that increase on the after-school program. So once again, all in favor, we've got, Councilor Davis, is that to the motion?
To the motion.
Okay.
Well, and again, I want to highlight what's going on here, because that's really what we're doing. If we're taking this funding out, then ultimately the natatorium is going to be operated at what, 50, 45 hours?
Well, 850, 825,000.
It was 49.
We were at 45 hours. And so this would take the budget to 992,000. We might get 10,
That doesn't even get you 56 according to the...
No, it's not going to get us, I don't think it'll get us 56 hours, but we'll get what we can get out of it.
Well, and that, Mr. Budget Chair, I think that opens up a whole new conversation if that's what, from a direction of how, it's 11th hour, but really we're talking about now how to proceed, how to manage the natatorium. And, right now, based on the funding, I'm hearing the city manager is going to stick to a plan unless we have a conversation on this and how we're going to deal with the shortfall. So.
And I think every member of the Budget Review Committee is well aware that if they cut it some more, it's been spelled out 2 or 3 times, and and I agree with you. It's something's got to give somewhere, and that's the nature of an extremely tight budget. And I think that at this juncture, there are some who believe that maybe now's the right time to fund that at the full amount. So we'll call the question, and if it's still inconclusive, then the $4 increase stays in. So there's any further discussion on the motion to eliminate the increase. All in favor of eliminating the increase on the after-school program, please say aye. All opposed, say no. All right, all in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, and all opposed? 2, 6 to 2. So it is out. All right.
All right, the next item was to transfer the Cooper Creek revenue, and it's really kind of a wash, is just to designate that as Cooper Creek as opposed to the natatorium.
Do we need a motion?
It doesn't make any changes to the general fund at all.
Okay.
The next item was something that was left off by staff, and that was the overtime for municipal court clerk at $24,760. Our recommendation is to take that from non-departmental out of the street lighting. We budgeted $3.5 million. Our projections are between $3,450,000 and $3,475,000, so we believe we'll have enough.
All right, motion second. Any comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Passes.
The next item is to add $209,000 to the sheriff's office for pharmaceuticals. That has a 0.50 day impact on the fund balance, so that would go below the 60 days.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought we substituted a $1.2 million increase to his department in lieu of that. Did we not? Who made that?
I thought that was in addition. That was Mayor Pro Tem Pugh.
Yeah, did you want both of them on there, or did the 1.2 million on the sheriff's, where you had originally put the $200,000 increase to pharmaceuticals, and then we had a 1.2 increase to his overall budget? The final, yeah. So let's just, we can.
So the 1.2 million would be 2.87 days.
Okay. So there's a motion, is there a motion on the floor to add that? Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Okay, there's a motion and a second to add 1.2 million back to the sheriff's budget. Any discussion or questions? All right. Councilor Baker?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't want to interfere with your motion and your vote.
Yes, sir.
but we would go far below 60 days.
You're correct. And
And
the
so-
only way to recapture that would be to come up with some kind of change prior to the first reading of the budget.
And just one other thing to consider, I don't know in the history of the city we've ever passed a budget that
Not
was
since
below
I've been-
60 days.
Not since I've been.
I don't even know what the ramifications of that would be, but it would be extraordinary. I don't know that cities pass budgets that are below their
Mayor
reserve.
Pro Tem?
I don't, in the history, the 28 years I've been down here, this is the first time this council has been given a budget and not told up front that everything was not in the budget.
Okay.
Now, we got a lot of firsts.
Yeah.
But it really irritates me knowing that something's been left out of the budget and we were not told from the very beginning. We could have dealt with this from the very beginning.
Well, I know that, obviously, I hear your frustration. I just want to bring up some things that I know are uncomfortable, but it's a matter of public record. There was actually a motion filed in the litigation about this, and all councilors signed affidavits, including the budget chair. I signed an affidavit, the city manager signed an affidavit, Pam signed an affidavit, and I think all of those affidavits, and certainly in the motion for summary judgment in which those affidavits supported, a major contention was that the sheriff last year and this year had turned in his budget so late so as to not provide the administration with a meaningful opportunity to incorporate his requests. So that was a major part of the litigation. It was a major part of your testimony in that litigation. It is a major contention in the litigation that he does not believe he has to participate in the preparation of the budget. That's all public record. I'm not saying anything out of school. So I appreciate your frustration. Imagine our frustration at having charter-required duties and an elected official that does not believe he has to participate in that process so we can get you that information.
But Mayor, regardless of what he does or does not do, when you give us the budget, that's between you and us.
Yes, ma'am, and
We
you're
get the
fully
budget.
aware of the fact that we did not have his information until the 11th hour, and what we did have, we provided on a thumb drive. And as I said, in all of that litigation and all of those filings and all of that testimony, it was made very, very clear that the sheriff had not given us his budget so that we could present to you fully this proposed budget. So, maybe it didn't all sink in or the dots didn't connect, I don't know, and I'm sorry for anybody's frustration, including my own. But everybody should be aware that the sheriff has not been providing us budgets because he does not believe in this recommended budget process. That's why you've each been sued, and we have each been sued.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments with regards, Council Baker?
Yeah, as I understand this would be going into the fund balance for an operating expense, would it not? I mean, this is not a one-time.
Absolutely.
This is an operating
And even if-
expense which could be conveyed every year.
Yep. Well, and aside from that, I think the fact that we're starting off below the 60 days, to me, makes it a challenge to support.
Yeah, I don't understand it. And I understand about the numbers, but again, on his handout today, there was $450,000 in overtime. And I don't know if that's a good number or not. I'm taking his word for
Well,
it, but, so there are a lot of things, in flux, but going below the fund balance for an operating expense is something I'm not going to do.
Well, and Mr. Chairman,
Just a second, sir.
It's based off of what staff said our year-to-date cost is for that line, for the overall bottom line figure. Not necessarily what he was requesting, but from what they gave us as to what his present year-to-date cost is, and estimating what is left for, I think, a month and a half.
Yeah, but they also had him on budget through 11 months.
They said what now?
They also had him on budget for 11 months,
He was tracking.
through
within
11
budget.
months almost.
Yeah, I understand, and I really do, and it is frustrating, and I think it's frustrating with the entire situation that we all find ourselves in. But bottom line is, there is an overall budget presented. Even though the staff did prepare line items, that was really, I would assume, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, to concoct the overall budget, to make sure that that amount was in there. So they don't know how to run the jail. There's no way they could have accurately identified what went in each line item. The overall budget, I think, is what, at this juncture, because of the way this one was compiled, is what we're forced to kind of deal with. And I think based on where he tracked this year within budget up to now, we don't know what's going to hit in the next couple of months. You know, I think I'm going to support, or excuse me, I'm not going to support adding anything to his budget. I think I can't do that without the knowledge that I need to be able to make that decision, and we don't have that right now. We have a little bit of time to try to identify some other areas. Feel certain somebody from his department will probably reach out to us as individuals and try to explain that. But I think where we are, we just focus on the overall budget. Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask Mayor Pro Tem if she would accept a change to her motion to fund it without going below 60 days. And then that would save us a great amount of heartache and a little bit of money and give us time to do, as the chair said, is to study a little further. And I mean, I'm concerned about the bailiff overtime. I don't know why we can't just hire more bailiffs and run them through there without overtime.
I think the challenge is, can we pass a budget that is not truly balanced? I mean, we'd have to identify where that 1.2 would come from, and I just don't know. I just don't know where we'd find that big a sum of money right now. So I agree with you. I think it'd be good, pass it, work on it, but really there's no offset that I know of other than the general fund reserve.
Yeah, I was saying take it to 60. And
So fund him as much as that?
Fund him up to 60.
Okay, I
and
misunderstood.
Then we can work with him on, I mean, I don't agree with his overtime for bailiffs. I don't know if you heard what I said, but I don't agree with his overtime for bailiffs. I think he should be able to hire more part-time bailiffs and work them as the hours dictate without paying overtime. I mean, that's what Ross does at the Civic Center, and other venues, other agencies do the same thing.
They manage their budget.
And when the ACA passed, we decided as a city that we were going to hire part-timers at 29 hours, and that's all they were going to work, because we didn't want to have to be forced to pay them benefits, which would have been an additional cost to the city. So
The overtime pay on this, not for bailiffs.
that's what I thought it was a bailiff.
Overtime
No.
is for sworn, I assume that's sworn officers and generals.
His request was $9,200 for general government employee overtime and $442,000 for sworn officer overtime, which would be those at the jail or working in the courtrooms.
And this time they take it to 60.
What would that be?
$121,403.
We're already there, essentially,
Well, I'm getting two answers. You said we're there, and the deputy city director said there's
Well, I'm saying,
121,000.
59.69 is where we are.
Yeah.
59.69.
I think
No, we're at 60.29 and until all the other ones are approved.
I don't like that. I don't like that.
That came out of Parks and Rec.
she's
Yeah.
calculated now to determine
I rely on Mike
in
and Scott to keep
dollars
us
the
honest.
capacity we have that we can.
Can't be much.
No, and that's my point. We're already there.
121,403.
And
That's too
We have
big for you, right?
$121,403
before we get
to
below
60.
60.
That's
So
correct.
you got $121,000.
Okay. All right, Councilor Allen,
Right.
apparently
For
there's,
everything.
We're just slightly above 60, that's worth $120,000. It's up to the Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Pro Tem, it was your motion.
Just vote against one.
Okay, that is an option.
And it'll leave it like it is.
That's right. All right, there's a motion and a second
For what?
to add $1.2 million to the sheriff's budget. Any further discussion, any questions? All in favor of adding that, please say aye. All opposed, say no.
No.
All right, I don't think we had any in favor. So it is defeated, so it'll stay just like it is.
The next items were out of the OLOST for the marshal's office, deputy for $53,176. That equates to .13 days.
All right, is there a motion to approve the deputy out of the OLOST? It still is, the OLOST is still used as general fund reserve or fund balance. So that would still put us over a day below the 60.
Which deputy is it?
Counselor Thomas.
I want to ask about that. Would that come out of the reserve, or would that come out of the,
It would come out of the OLOST reserve, which is part of the 60.29 days. So
I believe, if I recall, Ms. Hodge, that originally in the OLOST, the marshal's office was to have 5
that's correct.
deputy marshals, and those positions have been funded out of the OLOST, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And have been filled?
Yes, ma'am.
There's somebody holding those positions.
Yes.
And so if we pass this, that will make 6 positions being paid out of the OLOS, and the difference of that would come out of the reserve. Is that correct?
That's correct. Out of the OLOST, yes.
Out of the OLOS reserve, yes.
Right, that's correct.
Well, and I think we need to verify the authorized positions out of OLOS for Marshall versus what they've received. I believe they've received a couple of positions above and beyond what was authorized in OLOS, I believe.
They have 5, which was what was originally out of the OLOS.
Okay, so then we approve positions out of the general fund because they received, there were some
They
additions.
did some reorganizations, and they gave up deputy
Okay.
positions to create different positions.
Okay, anything else, Counselor Thomas? All right, there is no motion yet to add that deputy. All right, we have a motion, it's denied. Is there a second? There is a second to deny. Anybody want to talk to that motion? All right, all those in favor of denying that, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that one is turned down.
The next item is to add $8,000 to the marshal's fuel account.
All right, is there a motion to add the eight? All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Counselor Davis?
Yeah, I'm just having a hard time adding.
I'm sorry?
I'm just having a hard time adding back when actually fuel costs continue to stay down and remain down. I don't see how an additional fuel cost is going to serve when, well, you can call it, you can call it that, but I mean, fuel costs are down and they're not anticipated to be going up anytime soon. So I don't understand the request, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Absolutely.
In light of where the city is anticipating fuel cost as well.
But it would go, the offset would be the fund balance.
0.02 days.
Okay, there's a motion on the table to add that back in. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? No. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 2, all those opposed? It is denied.
The next item is to add $11,800 to auto parts and supplies. That equates to 0.03 days.
Is there a motion to add that? Motion to add? Is there a second? There's a second. Any discussion? I'm sorry, Counselor Huff made it to add. It's the 11th, this is the auto repair and maintenance for the, I think he highlighted 2 that may need engines and 1 that may need a transmission. No discussion, so all those in favor of adding 11,800, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 2, all against? It's denied.
The next item is uniforms for the marshal at $4,000, equates to .01 days.
Okay, is there a motion? Motion to deny. Motion to deny and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor to deny the $4,000 for uniforms, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, all those in favor of the denial, please raise your right hand. 2, 3. All right, and opposed? Okay, the motion to deny is carried.
The next item has to do with the Trade Center. This would come out of the Trade Center fund balance. This is capital replacement of the boilers of $210,000.
Motion second to approve the expense. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's coming out of the Trade Center fund balance.
The next item is another capital replacement coming out of the Trade Center fund balance for the lighting system at $80,000.
Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries.
And the last item is for community reinvestment. This would be reclasses of 2 individuals from a G12 to a G14, $3,941, and this would come from the admin allocation for both the CDBG and the home programs.
Is there a motion to approve the reclassification? Motion and second? Funding
This
sources
would
in the
be
presentation she
admin-
gave us.
The admin allocation from the CDBG grant and the home grant. That's correct.
Yeah.
No, this is an annual allocation.
Councilor Huff made the motion. Councilor Thomas seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All those in favor, raise your right hand, please. 7. All opposed? 1.
The last item that we just wanted to go through briefly was the health care update.
And
we'll have-
Mr. Chairman, if I could interrupt, we can stay as long as you'd like. I know it's been a long day.
We've already passed that. I'm just
But-
kidding.
But we've got a work session next Tuesday. We don't have a business meeting. It's a consent agenda with work session. And we can spend all day next Tuesday, as long as you want, going through healthcare, because this is something that would happen early. The open enrollment is September, October timeframe. It would be effective January, so we've got time to discuss it. And I know you're tired.
What?
It's
No,
been
no, no.
late.
What? I
It's up to
appreciate
you.
it. I've actually heard from people coming in today before the meeting, I think that was still today, that they would rather not get too involved in the health care discussion right now. I think what might be a great exercise is to send some emails from this group to Rether, because a lot of these questions are very specific, and a lot of us have some specific concerns about it. If we can hit her with those, and then you guys can craft a presentation that stays on topics that I think we really are concerned about.
Well, and again, we could have it first on the work session agenda, so you're fresh. And then, if we've got something else, we can add it after that, and if that goes too long, then we can postpone whatever else. And so we'd have the whole time, if necessary, for health care. So that's just a suggestion to you.
Councilor Thomas.
And Mr. City Manager, I would request that as there are parts of her presentation that she can send to us ahead of time,
Yeah.
so that we can take a look at, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
There may not be, and there may be, of course, additional things that, particularly if some of us ask question, so, but anything she can get to us ahead of time, I would appreciate.
Sure.
Thank you, ma'am. Counselor Baker.
Now, yeah, I do not want to get in that today, but I guess my question would be, is there anything in this budget, January through June of 17, that, in the health care? See what I'm saying, for that? Because that would be a budget issue, actually.
Right.
Well, but,
See what I'm saying?
but I think the cost is the cost. I think we're,
And that's-
you're more
that's
concerned with.
done, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's there.
okay.
And so the cost is the cost. What
This is just
you
because
want
where
to
we
get
take it
into is the
from.
details of deductibles out of pocket and all this other stuff.
Where we
Yeah.
take it from.
macro is in the budget.
And that doesn't have to be a budget issue as far as where we're going to take,
That's right.
whether it's a payroll deduction or a departmental assessment or whatever. Or
Yes.
something, okay. Just want to, well, don't say that word. Okay, thank you.